Chapter 1038. I've already contacted the headquarters. Yunhui asked the people in the villa to prepare some food and brought it back. On New Year's Eve, he and Old Wolf only ate some dumplings. Although they tasted good, they were not full. Old Wolf stared at Mr. Blind, who was still sitting cross-legged. He did not dare to relax at all. After receiving the food, he asked, "What did they say?" Yunhui said, "Last night there was a strange phenomenon in the depths of Mount Tai, causing a storm in the city. People from both the Taoist and demon realms went to check it out. A few team leaders also led their team members there. However, after 3 in the morning, the headquarters did not receive any news from here. Currently, we have lost contact for almost 12 hours. It's that serious." Old Wolf was shocked. Yunhui said seriously, "Yes, the headquarters sent people over overnight. Before that, they told us not to act rashly and to wait for reinforcements." As he said that, Yunhui looked at Mr. Blind and lowered his voice. "Also, the headquarters hopes that we can keep an eye on Qing Xiaozi." Old Wolf frowned. He felt that this mission was a little too difficult. This fellow before him had caused heavy casualties in both the Dao and Yao realms back then. He didn't know what kind of devil incarnate he was. He seemed to be injured now, but who knew if he had any other tricks up his sleeve? Facing such a great sinner of Shenzhou, Old Wolf felt as if he was a new prison guard facing a ferocious terrorist. He was under a lot of pressure. At this moment, Mr. Blind exhaled slowly and stood up. Yunhui and Old Wolf saw this and immediately tensed up. Yunhui even made a hand seal, condensing his magic power without releasing it. "Don't be nervous." Mr. Blind faced them and said, "Don't worry, I won't do anything to you. In fact, I hope to receive your help more now." Yunhui and Old Wolf looked at each other and frowned. Yunhui said hesitantly, "Taoist Qing Xiaozi, according to the information, you should have been exiled by the Taoist Association. Why did you come back again?" "Whether you believe it or not," Mr. Blind said seriously, "Kelowna is about to face a catastrophe. So, if it's possible, can the two of you help me get in touch with that person from the administration and let me have a chat with him?" "That? Who are you talking about?" Yunhui's eyebrows twitched. Mr. Blind said, "Naturally, it's the one who has been cultivating in seclusion under the Forbidden City." Yunhui and Old Wolf's expressions changed drastically. Mr. Blind said, "There's no need to be troubled. You can report this matter to your superiors. They will naturally consider whether to answer my call." Yunhui and the Old Wolf fell silent. "Taoist Qing Xiaozi, it's not that we don't want to give you an answer right away. It's just that with our level, there's really no way for us to come into contact with that person." Yunhui took a deep breath and said, "Regarding your request, I will contact the headquarters as soon as possible. If possible, please wait patiently." Although the headquarters had given the order to keep a close eye on Mr. Blind, they had also given instructions. Try your best to satisfy some of the other parties' requests within the permitted range. To be honest, Yunhui felt very conflicted about the headquarters' instructions. On one hand, this person was a great sinner of the Tao world. On the other hand, the headquarters seemed to view him as a distinguished guest. "I'll have to trouble the two of you. I'll continue meditating here." Mr. Blind quickly sat down cross-legged again. Yunhui hurriedly ran out to contact the headquarters. What Yunhui didn't expect was that, after the headquarters heard his request, they didn't even think about it for a long time before giving their approval. They really agreed? Old Wolf looked at Yunhui in astonishment. Yunhui nodded and said in disbelief, "My colleagues from the Secret Service Department have already rushed over. They told me to keep my phone available at all times." Old Wolf stole a glance at Mr. Blind, who was meditating, and frowned. "However, I really didn't expect the headquarters to agree to his request and invite that person. That person has been cultivating in seclusion for almost 60 years, right?" "That's right," Yunhui nodded and said emotionally, "Speaking of which, I've never seen him before. I've only heard my grandmaster, the 100 Tribulation Taoist, mention that there is such a person. He entered the Tao through martial arts and entered the Tao querying realm. Even the Qian division of the Xianyuan Palace has to treat him with respect. He's the legendary strongest warrior, the fire cloud evil god. At that moment, the old wolf lit his pipe and slowly took a puff. I also heard that when he made his debut, he consecutively challenged the patriarchs of the 4 heaven spirit clans and several reclusive experts of the Tao world. I heard that at the time, the fire cloud evil god could be said to be the strongest human in Kelowna, excluding Shinryu. Later on, the evil god planned to challenge our previous generation's greedy wolf star. However, after the greedy wolf star arranged a battle with the demon wolf girl from the west, he disappeared without a trace. As a result, the fire cloud evil god said that he would die without regrets if he could only fight with the wolf lord. Yun Hui remained silent. Old Wolf frowned and suddenly said, "Are you thinking about what Qing Xiazi said just now? It will lead to a catastrophe?" He nodded and said with a solemn expression, "Didn't the Tao demon and the people of the administration mysteriously disappear? There are so many powerful big shots. If they can't deal with certain situations and disappear, then this so-called calamity." Old Wolf didn't say anything. He just smoked his big pipe in silence. At this moment, the phone suddenly rang. It was from the general manager. It seemed that he had contacted the fire cloud evil god. After leaving the hotel, Zhang Qingrui quickly returned to the Song family's ancestral home, accompanied by Mr. Seven. The villagers who came in the morning had already left. The Song family had just finished their lunch. Zhang Qingrui hurriedly explained the cooperation to Old Master Song. Because Zhang Lilanfang and Song Tianyu had already reached an agreement, the original date of the operation on the second day of the new year was brought forward. Old Master Song frowned but still agreed. Those people who had prepared early had been waiting outside. For them, the concept of holidays was different from that of ordinary people. After a round of discussion, Old Master Song quickly asked the 5th uncle to mobilize the people. But this time, Song Tianyu did not go personally. Instead, he let Song Haoran lead the team. Song Ying was also left behind by Song Tianyu. Although Miss Ying was very curious, she was very sensible and did not clamor to touch the Song family's business. The people of the Song family had already settled down in a county 20 kilometers away. It would not take much time to get there from here. "You want to go too?" To Song Ying's surprise, Luoqiu actually took the initiative to ask for his participation. In her impression, this guy seemed to be more suitable to be in the study, the kitchen and the like. Luoqiu smiled. "Well, I heard you say that this seems to be one of the secret tombs of the first emperor. It has not been discovered yet, so I am a little curious. And your grandfather doesn't seem to want to interfere too much." Song Ying frowned and suddenly said, "Aren't you treating me like an outsider? My grandfather? Do you still feel unwell?" Luoqiu did not answer the question and asked casually, "I just heard that you asked someone to get some tomato juice. Is your stomach uncomfortable after you woke up?" "Don't change the topic." Song Ying shook her head. "Forget it. My grandfather does agree that men should exercise more. But he is willing to let you go, which is a little beyond my expectation. I thought he treated you like a treasure." Luoqiu just smiled and did not say anything. "Give me this." Song Ying suddenly stuffed something into Luoqiu's hand at this time. Luoqiu glanced at it and found that it was a miniature pistol the size of a palm. "Luger LC9S Luoqiu?" Song Ying said casually, "This is for my self-defense. If you follow the action tonight, Song Haoran will definitely give you some weapons to use. Although it is just exploring a tomb that no one has been to before, but things are unpredictable, no one knows whether there is danger or not. So, it is always good to have some backup. If I lose my original weapon, I can take out another one when I'm in danger. You'll thank me." "I will cherish it." Luochu put away the Luger LC-9S gratefully and then asked curiously, "Speaking of which, how do you usually hide it? It doesn't seem to be obvious." "It's none of your business. Just take it. So troublesome." Song Ying glared at him fiercely and walked away. But she didn't walk far before she turned back and said fiercely, "Don't lose it. Remember to return it to me when you come back. I am just lending it to you." Luochu weighed the pistol again, and then threw it into the backpack, taking it out when he encountered danger. Of course, it did not exist. He would just put it away and return it when he came back. "Song Ying seems to care about you." It was Zhang Qingrui's voice. At this moment, the young lady of the Zhang family walked over slowly with a faint smile on her face. From a long time ago, Zhang Qingrui was like a spring breeze. In addition, she obviously saw the scene where Song Ying gave him the pistol. Luochu thought for a while and said softly, "Maybe she cares about her family." "Family?" Zhang Qingrui thought. "What's the matter?" Zhang Qingrui smiled. "Nothing, I just want to see how you are preparing. To be honest, I am surprised that you would ask to join. I heard that you were finally found by the Song family, but I didn't expect that Song Howren would be willing to let you join. After all, this kind of thing, no one knows whether it is dangerous or not." Of course, Zhang Qingrui did not think that Luochu would be in any danger, if the future email she read was true. "What about you?" Luochu asked curiously. "You don't have to participate in this kind of activity, such as running an antique shop or related projects." Zhang Qingrui said faintly, "My grandma had entered the tomb dozens of times when she was my age." "There is something on your shoulder," Luochu suddenly said. Zhang Qingrui was stunned. She felt Luochu's fingers on her shoulder. It was a very light touch. Of course, Zhang Qingrui didn't believe that Luochu would find such an excuse to touch her. After all, they had been classmates for a whole year, and this guy didn't have any other intentions. Well, in a popular witty phrase, he was a typical Buddhist player. Perhaps it really did come into contact with something? "Thank you." Zhang Qingrui thanked him. "You're welcome." Luochu smiled. "If there is nothing else, I will go to prepare something." Zhang Qingrui looked at Luochu's backpack with a naughty smile. "Are you going to put a jacket into your pocket again?" This was Luochu's backpack that seemed to be able to hold a lot of things, but it was still a bit out of the ordinary. "Well, I won't tease you anymore. Go prepare," Zhang Qingrui said softly. Luochu nodded and walked back to his room. Looking at Luochu's back, Zhang Qingrui suddenly sighed. She pulled her hand out of the pocket of her down jacket, holding a small black pistol. Zhang Qingrui sighed and put her hand back into the pocket, looking up at the sky. The sky was not good, she needed to cheer up. Yuichi Suzuki took a shower and walked out with a towel. Although he was old, his body was still in good condition. His muscles were still clear even though he was 60 years old. He drank some water and walked to the living room of the suite, seeing Haruko Suzuki, was still looking at his laptop with great interest. "Are you still looking for the news about the strange phenomenon last night?" Yuichi Suzuki frowned and asked. "Get ready, it's time to go." Haruko Suzuki turned his head and smiled. "No, I just bought something." "Buy something?" Yuichi Suzuki was stunned. Suzuki Kai was the most powerful group in the Kanto region of Japan, so they had a lot of resources, and the Suzuki Group was one of the top 10 groups in Japan with countless assets. Although it couldn't be compared with the top families, it was still a very large family. Moreover, the Suzuki family was still young and had a lot of room for development. Of course, this was before the invasion of Yuichi Suzuki and Haruxan Suzuki. The reason why Lianjun is surprised is that such a Suzuki family can have everything as long as they ask. He doesn't understand what Orochi wants to buy. Is it possible that this guy has been infected with the bad habits of human beings after being possessed and likes to shop online? An isolated island in the sea, bought from an auction. Haruko Suzuki said with a smile. Brother Lianzhen, the sale of this island is legal. Although I don't know what use it has now, under the modern law, an island protected by the law will be of some use in the future. Puff. Suddenly, Haruko Suzuki spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood directly dyed the screen of the laptop red. What happened? Yuichi Suzuki's face suddenly turned ugly. He had formed a symbiotic contract with Yamada Serpent. Once Yamada Serpent was seriously injured, part of the injury would be transferred to him. Sharing weal and woe wasn't a casual statement. Chapter 1039. Zhang Qingrui looked valiant after putting on a set of equipment prepared by Mr. Seven, just like a general's daughter who suddenly became the commander. Basically, black and brown were the main colors, and he wore long boots that outlined his straight legs even more slender. As for the leather jacket used for the jacket, it was not as bulky as the down jacket, and overall, he looked quite capable. The descendants of the Li family needed to go into the tomb, which was an old family rule of Zhang Lilanfang's family. Even if the old lady loved her granddaughter very much, she didn't intend to avoid this family rule for her. But it was a bit harsh for the inexperienced young lady to participate in such a large-scale tomb operation. But thinking of the old lady's style, Seven didn't say anything more. "Miss, after we go in tonight, no matter what happens, you must stay by my side," Mr. Seven said seriously. "Remember, don't look, don't touch, don't ask. No matter how many doubts you have, hide them in your heart and ask after you come out." Zhang Qingrui nodded seriously, and then inserted a tactical dagger into the blade sheath under the vest, which added some heroic spirit to her whole person. At 6:30 in the evening, they had arrived at the agreed meeting place. Mu Xianghua and Suzuki's father and son hadn't arrived yet, but the people arranged by the Song family would arrive in 15 minutes. This time, the Song family had a total of 150 people. Nearly 300 people were sent from the village, but some of them were sent to protect Song Tianyu when he returned to the country. Although there were only a dozen bodyguards living in the ancestral house of the Song family, there were more than that outside the entire Song family village. Otherwise, the fifth uncle, who had been staying in the Song family village all the time, wouldn't need anything. Someone would send it from outside immediately. Naturally, it was because there was a huge service team behind the Song family. Mr. Seven didn't bring too many people, only 30 at most. But these people were all operated by the Li family, who inherited the experience and skills of tomb operation of the Li family in the past hundreds of years. It could be said that they were the peak of the industry. Of course, in terms of the level of illegal weapons, the Song family was naturally better. After all, the Song family was active in South America, a place where warlords and drug lords gathered and where the political situation was chaotic. Nervous? Song Haoran looked at Luochio and smiled. "You don't seem to talk much." On the other side, Mr. Seven was repeatedly warning his young miss. Song Haoran, who had followed the carriage, seemed to be planning to do the same thing. Of course, Luochio wasn't the talkative type, but this kind of action should be the first time, right? Even if according to the information, Luochio had a police background, he couldn't be indifferent. Song Haoran could only take Luochio's silence as a sign of forced composure. Luochio shook his head. "No, I'm just thinking about something." Song Haoran, "Oh?" Luochio said, "If I didn't go to the Song family, your family might not return to the country at this time, and then there wouldn't be this operation." Song Haoran shrugged and said, "That may not be the case. The old man and the Li family in the country have a lot of cooperation. When they talked about this business, it was before they found you. As for finding us, and, indeed, if the old man didn't plan to come back, the old lady wouldn't suddenly think of mobilizing some people from our side. But to be honest, even if it wasn't us, the Li family would still find other partners, or simply send more people. And these have nothing to do with you. So, even if we can't find you, the Li family will probably still carry out this exploration. The key is whether we participate or not." Luochio glanced at Song Haoran. Song Howren said casually, "'Cause chain is metaphysics. Isn't there such a saying, no matter who you are, the earth will still rotate with or without you?" Luocho just smiled and didn't say anything. At this time, the sound of some vehicles came. Not long after, several buses stopped on the side of the mountain road, and fierce men came out with big bags. These were the soldiers trained by the Song family in the village in South America. Seeing this group of valiant men, who seemed to have been stained with blood, ready to go, and quickly arranged themselves neatly, Mr. Seven, who was not far away, could not help but sigh. No wonder the Song family can survive in the chaotic South America. No matter how much money they have, they are still lacking. The key is still to have the strength to protect themselves. Zhang Qingrui's family was actually not bad, after all. It was the combination of the Zhang family and the ancient Li family. But to be honest, it was difficult for Zhang Lilanfang to make such a team in the country. Without a military background, who dared to privately amass soldiers? The Zhang family was more reflected in the aspects of money and government connections. Just when Song Howren was counting the number of people in his family, a group of people came close. There were about 70 to 80 people, but compared to the Song family's iron-blooded mercenaries, they were a lot lazier. Of course, they were well organized, but there was no sense of compactness at all. They were like a ragtag army. But considering that they were members of the Suzuki Kai, and the Suzuki Kai was a social organization, they naturally couldn't be compared with the specially trained mercenaries. If these 70 or 80 people were compared with the Suzuki Kai in their original place, they would probably be quite scary. After all, each of these guys looked unfriendly, and had their own characteristics. Mu Xianghua took the lead, and Suzuki and his son followed behind. At this time, the others also looked at Mu Xianghua's group. Luoqiu also glanced at them, especially when he saw Suzuki and his son. He blinked his eyes. "Well, it's really these two guys. I found something strange on Zhang Qingrui in the afternoon, and felt a little familiar. The last time I saw them was in the fragment world of Yanwue. How did these two guys come to me again?" "Miss Zhang, Mr. Seven." Mu Xianghua, as the contact of both sides and the initiator of this tomb entry, naturally came over to greet them with a smile, but when he saw the 150 people who were ready to go, he felt his heart beat wildly. If there was a conflict, he didn't think the Suzuki Kai guys could resist these 150 guys who emitted a terrifying aura. They were just like private soldiers. What was Miss Zhang thinking? "Mr. Mu, you're so punctual." The conversation was done by Mr. Seven, and Zhang Qingrui just nodded to Mu Xianghua. Zhang Qingrui came here mainly to experience and learn. She didn't make the decision for big things, but she also listened to the arrangement for small things. As the representative of the Zhang family, she just expressed her opinion at the appropriate time. Zhang Qingrui knew that outsiders shouldn't point fingers at the people in the family. The head of the Suzuki family and the young head of the family don't seem to have enough rest. Mr. Seven glanced at Suzuki and his son behind Mu Xianghua and casually said, "Are you not acclimatized?" "Haha, it's nothing," Mu Xianghua said with a smile. In fact, he was also puzzled. At noon, the father and son looked good, but in the afternoon, when they were about to set off, he saw Hiruxin Suzuki come out with a pale face. As for Yuichi Suzuki, he didn't seem to be so good. He didn't know what the father and son did in the room. He felt that the father and son seemed to have consumed a lot of energy. Was there a loving interaction between the father and son? "In that case, let's start?" Mr. Seven suggested at this time. A lot of preparations were needed to enter the tomb, especially for the first time. They had to be more careful. In a tomb that had been sealed for thousands of years, there might be no air. When opening the tomb, they needed to let the air circulate. At the same time, they also needed to check the quality of the air in the tomb to see if there were poisonous substances. A lot of high-tech instruments were needed. However, Mr. Seven had already prepared the necessary tools. After all, it was already a modern society, and technology was changing with each passing day. Naturally, it was not like the ancient times, where they needed to light candles and black donkey hooves. However, Mr. Seven habitually used his ancestral compass to make a few rounds. As for whether it was useful or not, only he himself knew. For this cooperation, the tomb map was in Mu Xianghua's hands. He didn't intend to take it out before the official operation. The map that was sent to the Li family was just a copy of a small part of the map. It was not complete. Song Haoran quickly had people set up a temporary tent. A group of people walked into the tent and began to study the complete map. However, for some reason, Suzuki and his son did not participate. The two just sat under a tree. Then, they were surrounded by Suzuki Kai people, as if they were guarding against something. They only sent a senior member of the Suzuki Kai to accompany Mu Xianghua. In the tent, the light magnified everyone's backs. Not far away, Suzuki and his son quietly looked at the tent at this time. No one knew what they were thinking. "Hakata, did you see anything?" Strange, except for Miss Zhang's super spiritual sense, the others don't seem to have the ability to kill my soul. Even you can't see it? I vaguely feel that the man called Song Haoran seems to have some secrets. I don't know why, but this man always gives me a dangerous feeling. I feel it too, but my intuition tells me that it's not him. Brother Lianzhen, it seems that the partner that Mu Xianghua found this time is really a little troublesome. These 150 soldiers have a strong murderous aura and smoke all over their bodies. I'm afraid that they are all soldiers who have experienced hundreds of battles. TSK, swallowing all these guys will be a great supplement. After this matter is over, I will choose a new body among these people. We still have to be careful. Miss Zhang is probably protected by an expert. But what I find strange is that the other party didn't follow the vine to find the melon. This makes me a little puzzled. Are you scared? Didn't you say that your soul's concealment ability is unparalleled in the world? You also said that with 70 or 80 people around you, you can completely hide your aura? That's true, but the soul power that was destroyed was mine. It's easy for you to say that. Forget it, it's just me showing off. Even if it's a little risky, I still have to finish it. Actually, with Hakata's temperament, if he knew that there was someone in the dark who could easily destroy his soul without him knowing, he wouldn't act blindly without thinking. It's just that the Suiho bead hidden in this tomb is very important to him. It's the opportunity for him to evolve the 9-headed Shangliu bloodline. No matter what, he can't just give it up. Who knows if the other party also came for the Suiho bead? Brother Lianzhen, don't worry. If there's any problem, immediately move. I've marked these 70 or 80 people in the Suzuki Kai. They can be moved at any time, including that Mu Xianghua. After we go in, I'll secretly compare the people from the Li and Song family. There are nearly 300 individuals. Even if the guy hiding in the dark is a god, I don't believe that he can distinguish them in an instant. That's good. Inside the tent, under the orange light, Zhang Qingrui bent down slightly to look at the map provided by Mu Xianghua. Her small and delicate nose seemed to be sparkling under the orange light. She had been in the antique business for a long time. Naturally, she had a set of skills to distinguish authentic work. The map looked ancient and was written in the language of the pre-Qin dynasty. The missing corner of the map matched perfectly with the small corner that Mu Xianghua had sent to the Li family. This small corner was about the size of a fingernail. Mu Xianghua had specially sent it to the Li family to carbonize it to prove that it was indeed a product of the Qin dynasty. It said that the first emperor once sent a necromancer, Su Fu, out to sea to search for the elixir of immortality. Is this map really left behind by Su Fu? Song Haoran asked with great interest. Song Haoran loved adventure and supernatural stories. In his many years of adventure, he naturally didn't miss out on this 2,000-year-old story passed down in China. Who knows? This map isn't really passed down by my ancestors. It's from the Takizawa family. Mu Xianghua cleared his throat at this time. However, the Takizawa family seemed to have considered that their business partner would ask a similar question, so they taught him a set of words. Yes, according to the story passed down by my ancestors, Su Fu seemed to have really found the elixir of immortality and brought it back to the first emperor. Later on, the emperor was very happy and gave Su Fu a lot of rewards. However, because of this, Su Fu also attracted the jealousy of many people. Later on, for some reason, the first emperor built many imperial tombs, and most of them were overseen by Su Fu. Mu Xianghua paused for a moment to recall the story of the Takizawa family. He continued, as you all know, the emperors of ancient times didn't like to have their tombs spread around when they were building tombs. Therefore, when the tombs were completed, they would kill all the workers involved in the construction. This map was secretly passed down by Su Fu. There is a passage that leads to the interior of the tomb. Then he escaped? Song Haoran stared at Mu Xianghua and asked. Mu Xianghua moved away slightly. I don't know about that, but this map was passed down by my ancestors. It seems that my ancestors had also participated in the construction of the tombs. They were Su Feng's people. I don't know the details. After all, it was something that happened 2,000 years ago. Chapter 1040. At this time, no matter how much Xuefeng tried to ignore the abnormality of Brother Mo Xiaofei, he couldn't convince himself. If the abnormality of Brother Mo Xiaofei was due to the plot of the weird old man in Wudong Mountain, then the abnormality of this Brother Mo Xiaofei was definitely not due to the plot. He seemed to be very familiar with this place. How to walk this road, how to avoid some of the restrictions along the way, everything was clear in his mind. He even said some weird things. Xuefeng remembered that Brother Mo Xiaofei had rushed to Mount Tai to find the successor of the Cloth sect to investigate his previous life. Could it be that the current Brother Mo Xiaofei was actually... But thinking of this, Xuefeng felt that he was indulging in fantasy. Although he was a single wandering wolf, he had been to some monster places. He remembered that when he was wandering, he met an old monster who was about to die and chatted with him for a while. Humans had past and present lives, and so did demons. The sixth Tao of reincarnation was in the hands of the Netherworld. It was said that there was a book in the Netherworld that could record a person's life. Good and bad, merits and demerits, everything was recorded in the Netherworld. The Netherworld would decide a person's next life according to the content of this book. There were 6 Tao in the Netherworld. A monster's next life could be a human, and a human's next life could also be a monster. But no matter what, one would forget the past after reincarnation. It was extremely difficult to recall one's previous life. What are you thinking about? Mo Xiaofei suddenly stopped and cast an inquiring look. There was an indescribable majesty in this look. Xuefeng didn't dare to look into his eyes. He scratched his head and said, I'm just thinking that we've been in here for a while. I don't know if the people outside have left. Wind-chasing wolf remembered that when he followed Mo Xiaofei in, they encountered an intruder with no mouth mask. In addition, there was another patrol team in the cave. Yes. Mo Xiaofei just nodded and didn't respond to Xuefeng's question. Xuefeng quickened his pace and caught up with Brother Mo Xiaofei. Well, brother, when are we going out? Are you in a hurry to leave? Xuefeng said, I want to pay a New Year's greeting to some friends on the first day of the Lunar New Year. In addition, I want to pay a New Year's greeting to your parents. Xuefeng thought that Mo Xiaofei wouldn't do this in his current state. So he had to do it. Unexpectedly, Mo Xiaofei said, the Lunar New Year's Day, the Lunar New Year's Lunar New Year has already passed. Wind-chasing wolf was stunned and subconsciously said, Ah? Brother, what? Lunar New Year's Lunar New Year? How long have we been in here? A few hours at most, right? It's not even to midnight. Mo Xiaofei glanced at Wind-chasing wolf indifferently. 1 day in heaven, 1 year in hell. Have you ever heard of this? To the god to the. To s. The god twos to the s to the s to the god. Only wind-chasing Wolf was left standing there in a daze. This place is almost. Wait, brother, what did you say? Brother. Emo Xiaofei went up the mountain with his hands behind his back. The mountain road was covered with clouds, and Juefeng couldn't catch up with him. Rumble! The huge stone pillars fell to the ground like trees that were cut down, raising a lot of smoke and dust. However, Wang Hu stopped instead and frowned. Behind him was the strange old ghost who had been egging him on to clear the stage with a normal attack. The old ghost claimed that he ran out from Xiao Xingma's 10,000 ghost tower. Because he stayed in the tower for hundreds of years, he didn't know much about the outside world. It was just that, although this old ghost's clothes were somewhat out of line with the current trends, it was not as exaggerated as the difference of a few hundred years. This old ghost claimed that everything was available in the 10,000 ghost tower, and City Master Xiao was a good ghost king who sympathized with his subordinate. Thus, even if he stayed in the 10,000 ghost tower, he would still be able to enjoy extraordinary treatment. Would the ghost city lord who was gloomy and terrifying have a side that sympathized with his subordinates? Wasn't the 10,000 ghost tower always burning with hellfire? Although the ghosts that entered the tower had the title of ghost soldiers and ghost generals, they weren't the real orthodox soldiers of the heavenly court. At most, they were just private soldiers. How could they have such good benefits? Brother Wang Hu, why did you stop? Haven't you noticed? Wang Hu snorted coldly. Only then did Tai Yinzi look around. Wang Hu had directly blasted a path out along the way, but when he looked back, those fallen stone pillars had quietly returned to their original state without him noticing. How could this be? Tai Yinzi couldn't help but frown. For Tai Yinzi, who had always failed the array when he was cultivating on the mountain 500 years ago, the strangeness of this maze was completely beyond his understanding. Wang Hu saw Tai Yinzi's stupid appearance at this time and frowned impatiently. He resisted the urge to give the other party a tyrant fist and sat straight on the ground. Since he couldn't rush through, there was no need to waste his strength. God knew what was waiting for him in this strange place. Old ghost. Wang Hu held his chin and looked at Tai Yinzi. I heard that Xiao Xingma was the ghost king for 500 to 600 years, but no one knows his origin. Do you know? Tai Yinzi was standing on a stone pillar at this time, looking around. When he heard the words, he said casually, I know, the one who herds cows. Wang Hu saw the old ghost pick his nose and knew that he was talking nonsense. Once again, he resisted the urge to give the old ghost a tyrant fist. Old ghost, I need to regulate my breath. You better not disturb me. Tai Yinzi yawned and said, You can do whatever you want. I also need to catch up on sleep. Recently, I've been working hard and mentally exhausted. Wang Hu heaved a sigh of relief and closed his eyes. As for Tai Yinzi, he floated down, leaned back against the stone pillar, and crossed his legs. Not long after, the sound of sleep came out. The snoring seemed to be a little louder. Wang Hu frowned, and finally suddenly opened his eyes. Tai Yinzi's snoring became more and more drawn out. Finally, Wang Hu suddenly stood up and walked in front of Tai Yinzi. At this time, Tai Yinzi seemed to have noticed something. He opened his eyes and said in surprise, Big brother Wang Hu, have you rested enough? Tyrant fist. Spin, 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 his face fell to the ground. Tai Yinzi dizzily climbed up from the ground and suddenly became angry. You damned brat! When I roamed the world, you were still the unborn chromosome in your father's body. You dare to challenge my bottom line again and again? I'm warning you, don't force me. Tyrant fist. You bastard, you dare! Tyrant fist. I'm warning you again. I have a background that you can't imagine. Tyrant fist. You still, tyrant fist. MMP. Believe it or not, I'll summon the boss to destroy you. Tyrant. This time, Wang Hu frowned and stopping his terrifying fist on Tai Yinzi's swollen face. Your boss. Taiyinzi sneered at this time. Humph. Ignorant little tiger, you don't know anything about power. If you annoy my boss, he doesn't need to do anything. That vicious woman can destroy you to the atomic level. Heh. Wang Hu sneered. Tyrant fist. After landing this time, Wang Hu directly lifted Taiyinzi's collar with lightning speed. Seeing that terrifying iron fist swinging out again, Taiyinzi shrank his neck in horror. He didn't know where this tiger demon came from, but his body was in so much pain that it faintly showed signs of cracking. He didn't know if his body could withstand a few more punches like this. Black Soul envoys weren't invincible, but they could still die. Shout. Wang Hu snorted at this time. Shout, shout? Taiyinzi was stunned. If I ask you to shout, you will shout. A vein faintly appeared on Wang Hu's forehead again. Taiyinzi made a sound in his throat, then glanced at Wang Hu's fist, and said in a trembling voice, Ah. Ah? Ah, ah, ah. At this time, the veins on Wang Hu's forehead bulged, and a white demon power suddenly rose, and a huge phantom of a tiger's head suddenly appeared in the sky. At this time, with Wang Hu as the center point, the ground began to move crazily as if it couldn't bear Wang Hu's weight. A large number of tiger stripes appeared on his face, and the murderous aura he casually released had already blown up the surrounding stone pillars. At this time, Wang Hu grabbed Taiyinzi's neck, raised him high and said coldly, Old ghost, don't play dumb with me. I'll give you one more chance, call out the boss you were talking about. Otherwise, with the next punch, I will make you completely disappear from this world. Divine Beast Transformation. Taiyinzi's face was full of shock. Damn. Didn't they say that he was just an ordinary member of the White Tiger race? Taiyinzi's mind turned quickly. How would he dare to really summon the boss in this place? Once he summoned a maid, wouldn't the matter of him stealing something from the club be exposed? God knows what kind of punishment was waiting for him. But it seemed that even if he didn't call out, he wouldn't be able to withstand Wang Hu's fist now, right? After quickly weighing the pros and cons in his heart, Taiyinzi immediately made a decision. At most, after this time, his work period would be extended again. It was better than dying in the hands of Qingtaro. Pui, dying in the hands of this brute. Fine. Since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being impolite. Taiyinzi blew his beard and glared. If you have the ability, let go of me first. Humph. Wang Hu casually threw Taiyinzi down and continued to release the demonic power in his body. The fine gravel on the ground rose up because of the demonic power. Taiyinzi mumbled and swallowed a mouthful of saliva again. After returning this time, he wouldn't come out no matter what. Taiyinzi took a deep breath. The reason why he was so calm was that even after being inexplicably transferred to this place, he could still clearly sense the existence of the club. In other words, in this place it was like staying in the club. There was a feeling of harmony. Therefore, Taiyinzi didn't doubt the possibility of summoning the boss here. However, what Taiyinzi didn't expect was that no matter how crazily he called the boss in his heart, he couldn't get a response from the boss. Is the person you're calling not in the service area? Pui. How is that possible? This place obviously exudes the aura of the club everywhere. Boss. This poor Taoist is wrong. This poor Taoist shouldn't have left his post without permission. This poor Taoist shouldn't have stolen something. This poor Taoist shouldn't have stolen your tea leaves. This poor Taoist will definitely correct this mistake. This poor Taoist is your main source of income. Boss. Meow meow? Old ghost. My patience is limited. What's the hurry? Taiyinzi braced himself and said, Since you're in such a hurry to die, this Taoist won't stop you. Don't wait for my boss to come. Hero. Have mercy. Please give me a little more time. Here, the signal here is bad. Go to hell. Tyrant fist. Seeing Wang Hu's fist coming, Taiyinzi somewhat sadly found that he couldn't dodge at all. He even felt some hatred. Why didn't he cultivate properly when he was in the sect? Since he was going to die, why didn't he make a mess of the club when he went out, turn the kitchen into a battlefield, smash all the things in the cupboard, blow up Adam, and break the boss's record? At least it would have angered that vicious woman to death. Boom! In an instant the ground shook because of this loud sound. However, Taeyinzi didn't feel the sharp pain caused by the fist that always broke his face. In front of him there was a barrier. Wang Hu's fist was blocked by this barrier at this moment. Like a bubble in soap water, under the refraction of the light, the barrier flowed with a glassy brilliance. "Boss, I knew you wouldn't abandon me." At this time, Taeyinzi suddenly shivered. Under the reflection of the light, he didn't know when there was an extra shadow on the ground. Taeyinzi was overjoyed and looked up. "Boss, save? Boss?" Taeyinzi's expression froze at this moment. At this moment, the one floating in the air wasn't Luochio, nor was it the club's servant girl that Taeyinzi was afraid of. Instead, it was a petite figure. Long purple hair, about 11 or 12 years old, white skin and a cold expression. The girl's gaze fell on the ground, sweeping past Wang Hu and Taeyinzi, then slowly descended. The gorgeous purple dress swayed slightly. Prototype Universal Treasure House Manager, Gaia. Who's calling? Chapter 1041. His fist stopped in the air, blocked by a strange force field-like thing. It couldn't go any further. For Wang Hu, who could smash anything with his fist, this was a very uncomfortable thing. Therefore, he directly retracted his right hand, and his left hand instantly clenched into a fist, directly bombarding this strange light shield. As for this purple-haired little girl of unknown origin, he would deal with her after destroying this light shield. Boom! The ground shook even more violently because of this punch. Very few people knew that Wang Hu was actually left-handed. His left fist was much more terrifying than his right fist. With this punch, the light shield in front of him instantly sunk a little, but it recovered in an instant. Wang Hu's eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. He suddenly took a deep breath, and the third punch was already thrown out. If one punch didn't destroy it, then 2 punches, 3 punches. To put it bluntly, Wang Hu didn't believe that there was anything in this world that couldn't be destroyed. Boom, 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 boom. Looking at the fists that kept pouring on the light shield, Taeyinzi couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Such fists, even if only one landed on his body, he would probably vanish into thin air. This white tiger demon, is this serious now? Unlike Taeyinzi's horror, the purple-haired girl was expressionless at this time. She just silently glanced at it, and after a while, she spoke in a stiff tone. Detected. Carbon-based Level 3 life form. Second detection. Experimental body number 27 white tiger gene possession rate 33, 7%. Experimental body number 27 white tiger soul factor possession rate 7, 64%. Awakening requirement not compatible. She said something that Taeyinzi couldn't understand. This little girl who called herself Gaia looked at Taeyinzi at this time, her dark purple pupils slightly brightening. Detected. Life form with an alien origin. Second detection. Alien origin possession rate 4, 571%. Searching list of permissions. Highest permission, not compatible. Level 1 permission, not compatible. Level 2 permission, not compatible. Taeyinzi? Second detection. Level 3 permission, not compatible. Level 4 permission, not compatible. Level 5 permission, not compatible. Sublevel permission, compatible. Awakening requirement, meet. The purple-haired girl's deep purple eyes suddenly dimmed and returned to their original color. She lifted her skirt and bowed slightly in front of Taeyinzi. Prototype Universal Treasure Vault Manager Gaia at your service, Secondary Authority. Taeyinzi was confused. Wang Hu's fist suddenly stopped, no longer bombarding that strange light shield. Instead, he suddenly jumped up, went around the light shield, and punched towards Taeyinzi. Old ghost. Die! As the fist neared Tainzi suddenly shuddered. At this time, he couldn't care less about the origins of this strange little girl. He could only make a last-ditch effort and shouted in panic, Protect me!" "Understood." Instantly, the purple-haired girl raised her hand, and the light shield didn't move at all. It appeared in front of Tainzi and blocked Wang Hu's fist again. However, this fist was even more ferocious than before. After a loud boom, the terrifying fist force spread out from both sides of the light shield and rushed towards the stone forest behind Tainzi. The power of the tyrant fist extended over 100 meters. Tainzi stiffly turned his neck to take a look and saw that Wang Hu's fist force had created a 100-meter deep hole on his left and right. "Subdue him!" Tainzi hurriedly screamed at this time. "Understood." Once again, Gaia raised her arm. On her palm, spots of colorful light gathered and turned into a light ball. At this time, Wang Hu's hair all over his body seemed to have touched static electricity. He felt a chill on his back and quickly retreated. However, the colorful light ball in Gaia's palm suddenly changed shape. Numerous colorful ribbons of light shot out from the light ball and flew towards Wang Hu at an extremely fast speed. Wang Hu's pupils contracted. He suddenly exerted strength in his legs and moved quickly in the stone forest. However, these ribbons of light had an unusual tracking ability and were not messed up at all. There were also no signs of knots due to Wang Hu's various movements. Moreover, these ribbons of light were constantly splitting. In just a short time, the numerous ribbons of light had split into hundreds and appeared densely around Wang Hu. Damn it! He couldn't completely avoid them. His wrist was instantly wrapped by a colorful ribbons of light. Wang Hu snorted coldly and planned to forcefully break the ribbons of light. However, the ribbons of light could not be broken in a short time. Instead, more ribbons of light directly wrapped around his body at this time. In an instant, Wang Hu's body was wrapped by a large number of ribbons of light. After the ribbons of light completed the binding, they condensed at a very fast speed. In the end, Wang Hu's body was solidified by a strange gray crystal-like substance, and he could no longer move. Wang Hu, who was imprisoned, glared angrily. The demonic power in his body continuously erupted crazily. Faintly, his eyes turned vertical, and the tiger stripes on his body increased sharply by several times. However, at this time, Gai Yin just said indifferently, "Strengthen." The color of the strange crystal deepened a little in an instant. As for Wang Hu, at this time, the changes in his body gradually subsided. Those strange crystals that condensed on his body were actually crazily absorbing the demonic power that he released at this time. In just a short moment, Wang Hu's face looked slightly pale. He lowered his head, and his forehead was full of sweat, but he stared unwaveringly at this terrifying purple-haired girl. F***ck. Ignoring Wang Hu's mood at this time, Tainzi repeatedly cursed in his heart. He suddenly jumped up, his face full of disbelief. If this was done by the boss, Tainzi would believe it without a second thought. If it was the maid who did it, Tainzi would also agree. But what was the background of this little girl? A demonic beast that could transform into a divine beast among the 4 heavenly spirit clans. However, after completing the subduing of Wang Hu, Gaia stood still on the spot. Her head was slightly lowered, and her eyes seemed to have lost their luster. She gave Tainzi the feeling that she was a smart robot, Atom, in standby mode. Tainzi hesitated for a moment, and slowly tiptoed to the front of Gai Yin. However, at this time, Gaia slowly raised her head and looked at him without blinking, not saying a word. Tainzi's eyes turned, and he tentatively stretched out his finger, gently poking at Gaia's face. His finger gently sank into Gaia's cheek. The soft touch was no doubt no different from a real person, completely unlike Atom, who was like a bag of iron. Just as Tainzi was about to pinch other parts of her body to study carefully, Gaia's eyes suddenly flashed. Sub-level authority users' actions exceed authority, Self-protection program activated. Taiyinzi? Thunderball. A large number of thunderballs appeared out of thin air, and behind Gaia dozens of them? Or hundreds of them? Taiyinzi's consciousness also paused at this moment. He didn't have time to think too much. The terrifying thunderball hit him at this moment. Ah! After a long scream, Taiyinzi had turned into Jiao Taiyinzi, collapsed on the ground, and lost consciousness. As for Gaia, at this time, she lowered her head slightly again, and her eyes lost their luster. She just stood there quietly, motionless. Chi-Chi Kamaya and Ghost Baby's expressions suddenly became solemn, saying that this place was Penglai. If such words were said by others, Chi-Chi Kamaya and Ghost Baby would naturally consider the authenticity of the words. But these words were said by Long Shiruo. No one would doubt Long Shiruo's words, and this was the memory of the previous Shinryu. This is Penglai? Chi-Chi Kamaya frowned. The Jade Dragon Pearl unexpectedly brought us to this place? Long Shiruo's expression was rarely cold. Chi-Chi Kamaya, are you suspecting me? Chi-Chi Kamaya immediately shook his head. No. On the contrary, I believe it. But because I believe it, I feel it is inconceivable. Can I assume that behind all of this, it might be the work of the 71st generation Heaven Heart? Long Shiruo was stunned. Chi-Chi Kamaya's thinking was not without reason. The Jade Dragon Pearl had been pulled out from Wang's body, and Wang had left with the 71st generation's Heavenly Heart. The Penglai convention had been going on in Kelowna for a long time, and every convention ended with the cloth-clothes Dao's successor performing a sacrifice. If there was anyone in the Dao world who had the last chance to find Penglai, it was probably the cloth-clothes Dao's special sect. However, the 71st generation's Heavenly Heart had actually found Penglai long ago? A few decades ago. Chi-Chi Kamaya suddenly said, the cloth-clothes Dao produced a monstrous genius. Do you still remember Lord Long? Great sinner Qing Xiazi? Long Shiruo searched for this name and its story in her memory. I remember that it ended with the sacrifice of the 71st generation's Heavenly Heart. As for Qing Xiazi, he was exiled because of the 71st generation's plea before his death. Chi-Chi Kamaya said, Qing Xiazi was indeed the strongest successor in the history of the cloth-clothes Dao. At that time, he collected 7 spirit veins and attempted to communicate with the 12 ancestral spirit veins in Kelowna. He wanted to use the power of the earth in Kelowna to forcibly divine the location of Penglai. Unfortunately, the huge power accumulated in the end was not something that could be controlled by human power. It even provoked the Dragon Demon. Grandpa Turtle, what is the Dragon Demon? Luo Dance, who was already at Winky Face, couldn't help but ask. Chi-Chi Kamaya glanced at Long Shiruo, opened his mouth and hesitated. Long Shiruo said indifferently, the so-called Dragon Demon is a special life formed by the accumulation of resentment after the death of a dragon. The Dragon Demon likes to invade the spirit veins and seize the origin of the spirit veins so that it can be reborn as a dragon. But even if it is reborn, the new life formed by the Dragon Demon is also quite brutal. It will even devour other spirit veins to strengthen itself. If it is left alone, once it devours the 12 ancestral spirit veins of Kelowna, it will even directly damage the fate of Kelowna. Then at that time, Luo Dance opened her mouth. Chi-Chi Kamaya sighed. At that time, in order to suppress the violent power and prevent the 12 ancestral spirit veins of Kelowna from rioting, your sister Long was already busy. Therefore, the Dragon Demon could only be dealt with by the Taoist and Demon realms. Unfortunately, the two realms suffered heavy losses in the end. Many sects and demon clans lost their elites. Originally, as the initiator of the evil, the sinner Qing Xiazi was bound to die. But in the end, Tian Xin 70th sacrificed himself and eliminated the Dragon Demon, saving the two realms and the common people. Sigh. Tian Xian's 70th generation can be considered to have used his lifetime's merit and virtue to save Qing Xiazi's life. Tian Xian's 70th must love his disciple Qing Xiazi very much. Luo Dance said faintly. Chichikamaya and Long Shirua suddenly looked at Luo Dance. This made the little butterfly at a loss. She lowered her head and said timidly, Did I say something wrong? Long Shirua suddenly said, You're right. It's just that, we don't want to think like this. After saying that, Long Shirua sighed. It's all in the past. No matter what happened at that time, the important thing is what Tian Xian 71st is planning. With Qing Xiazi's crime as a lesson, isn't he afraid of provoking the dragon demon in the end? Does it mean that Tian Xian 71st has mastered the method of controlling the dragon demon? Chichikamaya frowned. Or, the Bu-Yi Taoism had already controlled the position of Penglai in the past decades, but they kept it a secret. It's hard to say. Long Shirua pointed between her fingers. The purpose of the 71 generations of Heavenly Heart is not Penglai, but to awaken the Reiki between heaven and earth. But we are indeed transported here by the power of Wang. Lord Long, it seems that it's very complicated now. If it's not Tian Xian 71st himself, he can't explain it at all. The most important thing now is to find Tian Xian 71st. Chichikamaya cupped his hands and said. Long Shirua smiled bitterly, That's right. But look at me now, I'm powerless. Chichikamaya took a deep breath and said, Then, Lord Long, please return the God Pearl for the time being and let me use the secret method once. Chichikamaya's secret method would greatly damage his vitality each time he used it. In the last Xiang Lu incident, Chichikamaya had already used it once. Because of this, he had been recuperating until now. Although it seemed that there was no big problem on the outside, Long Shirua knew that Chichikamaya had been secretly using medicine to recuperate. Until now, he was still strong on the outside but weak on the inside. How many lives do you have left? Long Shirua glared at Chichikamaya. Chichikamaya was silent. Who? But at that moment the ghost baby suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already more than 10 meters away. He was holding a dagger that shone with a cold light as he slashed at the air. At this moment, a shadow flashed away from the trajectory of the dagger and finally appeared. It was a man with a pale and gloomy face and full of ghost aura. After dodging Ghost Baby's attack, the man said coldly, You deserve to be the orphan of the Mingi clan. Your insight is really good. Ghost Baby frowned and the dagger in his hand was split into two. Your Xiao Xing Mo, the owner of Ghost City? The man with ghost aura chuckled, but it looked a little ferocious. He said, I didn't mean to hide here and eavesdrop. I was inexplicably transferred to this place. In order to protect myself, I had to hide a little. But, I seem to have heard something terrible. Chapter 1042. The moment Xiao Xingma looked at Long Shirua, Ghost Baby and Chichikamaya's eyes became cold. Chichikamaya turned the handle of his crutch slightly. At this time, Xiao Xingma said indifferently, I heard that Master Long had arrived early, but the various clans have visited Master Long many times, but Master Long has refused to meet. At first, everyone just thought that Master Long likes peace and quiet. After all, Lord Long has always been like this. But now, can I think that something happened to Lord Long, so you can't show your divinity in front of people? A very soft voice. Chichikamaya said indifferently, Do I need to explain to you why Lord Long doesn't want to see people? Xiao Xingma, have you been the Ghost King for hundreds of years that you have forgotten who gave you a place to live under Fengdu Ghost City? Xiao Xingma smiled. Of course I remember. So, I won't tell anyone about this. Don't worry, old turtle. These peaceful days were actually very easy to linger on and forget to return. I'm used to being idle, so I don't like to be in a mess all of a sudden. Chichikamaya frowned and glanced at Long Shirua. Long Shirua nodded slightly at this time. Chichikamaya said, Ghost baby, come back. Ghost baby, who was holding 2 daggers, threw the daggers in his hands, and 2 cold lights spun in the air before disappearing. Ghost baby stepped back, but his eyes never left Xiao Xingma for a moment. Xiao Xingma didn't seem to care about Long Shirua's current situation. He said directly, "Just now I heard Lord Long say that this place is Penglai. Is it true?" Long Shirua said indifferently, "This place is just similar to the memory of the previous Shinryu. I'm not sure whether it is or not. I've never been here personally, so how would I know?" Xiao Xing was silent for a while, then asked again, "Then, what's the deal with the Heavenly Heart 71 generation? City Lord Xiao, aren't you asking too many questions?" Chichi Kamaya suddenly interjected. Xiao Xingma didn't seem to mind at all. Instead, he said with a straight face, "Although this Xiao is just a wandering crane, I'm still a member of Kelowna. The disaster from several decades ago is still fresh in this Xiao's memory. If the plainclothes path were to repeat its mistakes, how could this Xiao just sit by and watch? Fengdu City is already full of ghosts. If more people are added, I'm afraid this ghost city will have to be moved out. I think Lord Long won't like it either, right?" Chichi Kamaya chuckled and said, "City Lord Xiao is good at managing the ghost city. Even if more people are added, I believe with City Lord Zhao's talent, you'll be able to arrange it properly." Xiao Xingma said indifferently, "Old Turtle, do you know how many lonely souls and wild ghosts Fengdu Ghost City has taken in since the underworld closed?" Chichi Kamaya was startled. Long Shiru also frowned at this time. "It's already that serious?" Xiao Xingma said, "This Xiao doesn't want to see the real ghost energy soaring to the sky. At that time, I'm afraid even if the administration is dispatched, even the Taoist and demon realm can't deal with it perfectly." Long Shirua was silent for a moment, then asked in a deep voice, "Xiao Xingma, what do you want?" City Lord Xiao said faintly, "If this place is really Penglai, this Xiao only hopes to find a way to reincarnate souls. Even if not, at least find some information about the underworld. I can't be sure that this is the real Penglai." Long Shirua said seriously at this time, "Even if it's true, I can't promise you anything. But it's undeniable that I do need your help at the moment. Chichi Kamaya, share the information with City Lord Xiao." Chichi Kamaya immediately explained to Xiao Xingma about the 71 generations of Tian Xin and Wang. After knowing the general situation, Xiao Xingma was silent for a while, then said, "If the spiritual energy is restored, it can be a way to solve the ghost problem." Xiao Xingma glanced at everyone's expression, then shook his head and said, "But what this Xiao wants is the reincarnation path of reincarnation. Whether the spiritual energy is restored or not, this Xiao doesn't care." Long Shirua said, "Xiao Xingma, whether you can find the reincarnation path in Penglai, I promise you that after this, I will help you expand the ghost city of Fengdu. If the ghost city is really full, I can't sit by and do nothing. If so, this Xiao thanks Lord Long." Xiao Xingma bowed his head, without any hypocrisy. Seeing that Xiao Xingma was discussing with Long Shirua and Chichi Kamaya, Luo Dance quietly came to Ghost Baby's side. She could only come to Ghost Baby, who couldn't join in the conversation. "Mr. Ghost Baby, this City Lord Xiao seems to be a good person?" Little Butterfly blinked and whispered. Ghost Baby glanced at Luo Dance indifferently and walked away with a snort. "Did he say something wrong again?" Luo Dance Sigma, degree. For Long Shirua, it was indeed unexpected to let Xiao Xingma know her current situation, and there were unpredictable hidden dangers. But no matter what, for the current situation, Xiao Xingma was a rare help. Of course, she wouldn't easily believe Xiao Xingma's words, so Long Shirua didn't reveal that she could still use the clone creation ability. But in the current situation, at least Xiao Xingma was more reasonable than a certain profiteer. Maybe it was just because some of Xiao Xingma's ideas were consistent with hers? Same camp, different camp. Long Shirua smiled bitterly. Everyone was dishonest and unwilling to compromise. Let's go to that mountain. Long Shirua pointed to the mountain at this time. These were the images that she had inherited from her memories. In addition, there were also some extremely ancient memories that began to appear one after another. Since she inherited everything of the previous Shinryu, they were buried in the deepest part of the inheritance and couldn't be touched easily. But after coming here, they began to float up from the deepest part. The cell is active, put it in the culture tank, it's still restless, it seems to be a bestial relationship, try to remove a group of gene chains of the seventh material. Experimental subject 009 is in stable condition, some sounds and some images. She shuddered. The sorrowful cries continued for an unknown amount of time before finally stopping. Throughout the process, Zixing looked at the distorted expression of the child on the altar. The mysterious man with the bronze mask pulled out a total of 7 light clusters from the child. One of the balls was directly thrown into the soil above by the mysterious person and finally disappeared. As for the remaining 6 balls, they floated around the long-haired child. Like a patient with a terminal illness, the long-haired child had already fainted and was sleeping quietly on the altar. A large amount of pure aura was constantly escaping from the remaining 6 light clusters at this moment. Zixing regained some strength as a result. Her monster energy had been continuously absorbed by the crystal. Of course, these auras only restored some of her strength, but they couldn't restore the vitality that was continuously being extracted. At this moment, the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan's long hair had turned white, and she was dispirited. At this time, the man with the bronze mask sat cross-legged on the altar and raised his hand. Under the altar, the younger of the 2 men who had fainted slowly floated up at this time and floated all the way to the altar. The mysterious man waved his hand, and the young man's clothes were instantly torn apart. Behind the young man's back, there was actually a strange spell that shone with golden light. The Emperor's edict? Zixing looked over and was shocked. Is this person the lucky one who got the Emperor's edict? This person is the successor of Anjin Dao, but his talent is extraordinary, and his opportunity is also different from ordinary people. The mysterious man with the bronze mask said slowly at this time, At first, I just planned to let someone find the edict and bring it out, but I didn't expect that the edict would be integrated into his body after meeting this person. This is a little unexpected, Zixing said in disbelief. The Emperor's edict and the Taoist and Monster Realm are fighting over it, but you got it early and released it, just to take the opportunity to capture the Taoist and Monster Realm trapped here? This is the Emperor's edict, but it's not the inheritance of the god of Mount Tai as you think. The man with the bronze mask said indifferently, its real function is to let the god of Mount Tai descend. The great Emperor of Dongyu, the god of Mount Tai. Zixing suddenly gasped. Are you planning to use the Taoist and Monster Realm here as a sacrifice to let the god of Mount Tai descend? Gods and immortals were extinct in Kelowna, and they could only be glimpsed in ancient legends. In a world where the path to immortality had been cut off, what did the appearance of a god mean? As expected of the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan, a priest of the clan. The man with the bronze mask seemed to have a smile. Your guess is almost there. However, this edict is enough to let the god of Mount Tai descend, and there's no need to sacrifice anything. I have other uses for most of the life force here. Most of? Zixing frowned. A small part of it will be used for other purposes. The man with the bronze mask stood up at this time and put his hands together. At this moment, the entire altar began to tremble. The altar split open from the middle, and something was slowly extending out of it. It was a crystal coffin made of crystals. The crystal coffin stood upright and finally floated out from the inside of the altar. Zixing vaguely saw a figure hiding in the transparent crystal coffin. The man with the bronze mask looked at the hazy figure in the coffin silently and murmured, Soon, you'll be able to come back. You'll be resurrected, and you'll see a great era of spiritual energy, an era that belongs to us. Hearing this, Zixing's mind suddenly exploded, and she quivered. The god of Mount Tai is in charge of yin and yang, reversing life and death, resurrecting life. Could it be? She suddenly looked at the altar and said in a trembling voice, "The monarch's sacrifice of Mount Tai. Who is the person you want to resurrect?" The man with the bronze mask slowly turned around, and his eyes seemed to pass through the crystal pillars and fell directly on Zixing. "Heaven's will, the 70th generation." Zixing's face changed in shock. Of course, she knew about Heaven's will, the 70th generation. Even if she hadn't taken over the position of the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan at that time, many elders in the clan had talked about this matter. The plain-clothed Tao Heaven's will, the 70th generation who destroyed the Long Shah with his own strength and finally saved Kelowna from a catastrophe. Resurrecting the dead. Zixing slowly lowered her head. At this moment, what appeared in her mind was the scene in the cave covered by wind and snow many years ago. The blood that warmed her. The back of the little figure that dug out her heart. Brother, seeing that Zixing seemed to have fallen into a strange state, the man with the bronze mask didn't care too much. After a casual glance, he no longer paid attention to her. She was trapped in the crystal and couldn't escape. Instead, he looked at the young man floating in the air, Jean Eyre. "Since the edict will be integrated into your body, at least it proves that you will be a good carrier," he said slowly. "Becoming a carrier is also a kind of opportunity. If you can survive, your future will become bright. In the era of the recovery of spirit chi in the future, maybe you will become the leader of the younger generation. But whether you can survive or not, it will depend on your luck." At this moment, the edict on Jean Eyre's back became brighter and brighter. In this huge space, at this moment, a supreme aura was gradually emitted from Jean Eyre's body. The descent has begun. The candlesticks in the lobby suddenly lit up. At the same time, a distortion appeared in the lobby of the club. From the distorted space, the club's servant girl and Taisetsu slowly walked out. Taisetsu looked at the dark round ball in his hand, about the size of 1.5 basketballs. This was the so-called source of foreign bodies extracted from the void original demons that he killed. According to Yu Yi, this amount was enough to create hundreds of ordinary black soul envoys. If it was used to transform one like him, it was barely enough for one. Anyway, Taisetsu didn't know much about it. "I'm going to take a bath, is there enough time?" Taisetsu put the ball on the counter and asked. Yu Yi smiled. "Go ahead, I'll put these materials away first." Okay. Although the body of a black soul envoy had many conveniences, even if it was dirty, it could be cleaned up with just a thought. But Taisetsu hadn't been a black soul envoy for a long time, so he was more accustomed to human habits. Besides, taking a bath was really a good way to reduce stress. But Taisetsu's desire to take a bath seemed to be delayed. When he opened the door of the washroom, he saw a white-haired girl sitting on the toilet, leaning against the wall, breathing out, snoring. And this white-haired girl was holding a bowl in her hand. Chapter 1043. "She's a guest," Miss Maid said. "Guest?" Daz was stunned for a moment. "Why is the guest squatting in the bathroom with a bowl? It seems that he has eaten here?" "Maybe it's the guest's personal hobby," Miss Maid said calmly. "Well, what can Taisetsu say? It's just that this guest named Nero can fall asleep in this place, which is really strange. Even when he is talking to Miss Yu Yi, she doesn't wake up. Maybe she's too tired," Miss Maid said again. "But since this guest likes to be here, then in line with the principle of customer first, we'd better not disturb her." "Well, there's no problem with this." But in front of Daz, Miss Maid gently locked the door of the bathroom from the outside to the inside. Locked. The bathroom door. Did she really sleep because she was tired? Taisetsu always felt that something unspeakable had happened. Of course, as a social person before becoming a black soul messenger, Taisetsu was very smart not to explore the truth. "I hope Miss Nero, who is only wrapped in a bath towel, won't catch a cold." Well, The temperature in the club seems to have suddenly dropped a little. Taisetsu thought with a puzzled face. Is the temperature in the club not constant? But the only bathroom on this floor was occupied, and Taisetsu really couldn't find a place to take a bath. The upper floor is the personal space of the boss and Yu Yi. It seems that there is a room on the upper floor assigned to a black soul messenger for a large-scale project, but Taisetsu hasn't seen it. He was too embarrassed to continue to ask for a bath, so he had to give up the idea. With a thought, the stainless steel on his body disappeared. Miss Maid made a cup of flower tea at this time. You've been training in the gap between dimensions for a while. Have a good rest. This cup of tea can help to restore your spirit. Taisetsu took a sip and only felt that the tense state of mind seemed to have been washed, which made him feel indescribably comfortable. Can I lie down on the sofa in the lobby? Taisetsu said. Yu Yi nodded. Help yourself. I'm going to take care of something. It seems that a big rat sneaked into the kitchen and ate the food. Ayaya, I'm afraid I'll have to use a mousetrap next time. Taisetsu's face was full of question marks as he watched Miss Maid glide up to the second floor. There are rats in the club. Are you kidding me? When Yu Yi pushed open the door of the main God World's computer room, the sound of several mainframes running could be heard. At that moment, Adam's electronic eyes flashed and woke up from standby mode. Master! Where's Tainzi? Yu Yi sat down beside Adam and entered the game world through the screen. Of course, she did not use her consciousness to enter the game world. She just browsed through the content of the world. He left 4 hours and 39 minutes ago, and then entered the trusteeship mode, Adam said stiffly. Miss Maid's fingers stopped in the middle of the screen and she frowned. What's this? Adam said. This is a large-scale event that just ended in the game world. Master, what you see is the DLC that hasn't been destroyed yet. Looking at the world boss on the screen with a ferocious face, fangs and claws, Miss Maid suddenly narrowed her eyes. Oh, where's the Dark Maid? For some reason there was always a chill on his back. The charred body lying on the ground suddenly cracked, and then a wisp of smoke-like thing emerged from the cracked charred shell. Then it gathered and finally returned to a human shape. Tainzi twisted his neck and waist, and he felt a lot weaker. Tainzi hammered his shoulder, and felt that he seemed to have forgotten something before he went out. But his doubts disappeared quickly because he remembered what happened before. Tainzi suddenly became nervous. In front of him, the terrifying little girl Gaia was still standing in the same place, slightly lowering her head and motionless. As for Wang Hu, who was subdued, he still looked like before Tainzi lost consciousness. His body was covered by a large number of strange crystals, and he couldn't move, but his eyes were staring at Tainzi. His stare made Tainzi's hair stand on end. Fortunately, Wang Hu's mouth was also sealed. Stares can't kill people. What's the situation with this girl? Tainzi thought about the current situation for a while, and finally came in front of Gaia again. This time, he was much more well-behaved. If the hundreds of lightning balls were to come again, he reckoned that he would really die. But what should he say to this terrifying little girl? According to the previous situation, Gaia seemed to be able to accept his orders. Tainzi was obviously calling for the boss, but he didn't expect to call for such a terrifying little girl. Was there some kind of relationship between this little girl and the club? Gaia? Gaia? Tainzi hesitated for a moment, and tried to call out the little girl's name. Gaia heard and slightly raised her head, her purple eyes regaining a bit of color. Tainzi felt that this pair of eyes seemed to be scanning him. Identity of secondary authority holder confirmed. Prototype Universal Treasure House Manager Gaia at your service. Try calling out twice? Tainzi said tentatively. Gaia's eyes flashed. Please describe the specific content of this action in detail. Try meowing like a cat, Tainzi thought for a while and said. Gaia's purple eyes flashed again, and then she gently raised her hand and placed it beside her cheek, holding it lightly and slightly tilting her head. Meow, she really did it? Taiyinzi's lips moved. Who said that Gaia still didn't have any expression, and her voice didn't have any emotions, but she still did what he said, and even acted cute on her own accord. Taiyinzi's brain started to work crazily, and he tried hard to recall every word that Gaia said before he was knocked out by the thunderball. Suddenly, Taiyinzi's heart skipped a beat. Gaia is my secondary authority based on the percentage of the foreign body source in my body? Gaia nodded, confirm, as expected. The so-called foreign source, Taiyinzi didn't know what it was, but without a doubt, it should be a special substance that formed the body of a Black Soul envoy. Otherwise, it really couldn't explain the uniqueness of the Black Soul envoy's body. Thinking about it this way, then wouldn't the Black Soul envoys in the club be able to obtain the authority from Gaia? For example, wouldn't Black Soul number 9, who had taught him before, have a higher oil content than him? Wouldn't he be able to obtain a higher authority? What about the maid in the club? Taiyinzi wasn't sure about this, because he knew that the maid's body was made by Western alchemy. Miss Maid was still different from the Black Soul envoys. So, she couldn't obtain the authority from Gaia? No. The key wasn't about the authority, but the relationship between Gaia and the club. Gaia, were you made by the club? Why haven't I seen you before? Taiyinzi asked carefully. Gaia's eyes flashed a few times, and then she slowly said, a negative. Gaia wasn't made by the club, but by the master. Your master, who is he? Taiyinzi swallowed his saliva, and felt that he was in contact with something that he shouldn't know at this stage. Master is, the girl in front of him suddenly closed her eyes. Search. Keyword, master. Search, keyword, maid. Search, keyword, Gaia. Memory missing. Search failed, unable to answer. Search failed. Search failed. Failed. Gaia is a failed product. Failed product. Failed. Suddenly, the terrifying thunderballs appeared behind the girl again, and the number made Taiyinzi tremble. Gaia seemed to be a little abnormal at this time. She hugged her head with both hands, as if she didn't know that she had released so many terrifying thunderballs. Taiyinzi took a deep breath at this time. What's wrong with his head? Stop. Stop, stop, stop. Stop. Taiyinzi shouted in horror. Gaia? Stop. Don't ask this question. Master Taoist. Bah, I give up on the answer. Perhaps it was because Gaia's second-class authority was still effective, but after hearing this, Gaia began to calm down. In the end, it returned to its original posture of lowering its head and waiting for an opportunity. This was a ticking time bomb. Taiyinzi forced himself to calm down. At this time, he was afraid that if he asked someone, Gaia would fall into the state of almost losing control. But with so many questions in mind, Taiyinzi felt very uncomfortable. Gaia? The secondary authority confirmed. Trial-type Universal Treasure House Administrator Gaia at your service. Do you know a person called Yu Yi? Taiyinzi clenched his teeth. Female, body made by alchemy, the club's maid. This person doesn't exist in the database. What about the boss? Taiyinzi's heart suddenly jumped. The thumping sound directly hit his ears. The club's boss, Luochio. Do you know? This person doesn't exist in the database. Could it be the boss's predecessor? Moreover, this Gaia existed even longer than the maid? If it was made by the predecessor, then why did the predecessor leave Gaia in this place? Wait, what is this place? Gaia, you should know what this place is, right? Gaia, treasure house. Whose treasure house? Master's treasure house, guarded by Gaia. Master is. Forget it, don't answer this question. Taiyinzi shook his head and then began to ponder. In all honesty, the reason why he was thinking so hard recently was because he was planning the New Year's event in the game. Gaia, in this place, is there anyone with higher authority than me? Taiyinzi suddenly asked. Temporarily no. What is your purpose of staying here? The waiting for the authority holder to come and execute the authority holder's order. Gaia, execute the order. Taiyinzi suddenly thought of something and asked, Gaia, my body is bound by something, causing me to be controlled by someone and unable to free myself. Can you help me solve this problem? Taiyinzi didn't know why he asked this question. He was very nervous because he wasn't sure if his thoughts would be reflected in the boss's mind. His Black Soul Envoy identity was given by the boss, and the boss had absolute control over the Black Soul Envoy. It was like an order that was branded into the depths of the soul. Taiyinzi couldn't find a chance to solve this curse-like thing. But if this Gaia had existed longer than the maid and was left behind by the predecessor, then would she know the way to solve it? If Gaia could really solve it, did it mean that he would be able to escape from the boss's control? Once this thought appeared in his mind, Taiyinzi felt as though he was possessed and couldn't stop. He looked at Gaia intently and waited for the little girl to give him a definite answer. Gaia gave him an answer, a determination. Secondary authority holder is bound to the Eternal Kingdom Citizen ID. Do you wish to delete this ID? Eternal Kingdom Citizen ID. What was that? Another identity of the Black Soul Envoy? Taiyinzi frowned. He wasn't in a hurry to delete this thing. Instead, he asked, Delete? How do I delete it? Gaia. Remove the Eternal Kingdom Citizen ID from the secondary authority holder. Taiyinzi was taken aback. What will happen to me after removing it? Gaia. After removing the Eternal Kingdom Citizen ID, the secondary authority holder will be removed. Question. Do you wish to remove it? Taiyinzi thought for a while and sighed. I have an MMP, but I don't know if I should say it. Originally, he thought that he could use this thing that was suspected to be the legacy of the previous owner, which was more antique than Yu Yi, to get rid of his identity as the animal of the Black-Hearted Enterprise Club, and then fly freely. Question. What does MMP mean? I'm not in the mood to tell you. Taiyinzi glared fiercely at Gaia. If not for the fact that he couldn't defeat her, he would have torn her apart. Gaia didn't ask more. At this time, his eyes slowly dimmed as if he was going to enter the standby state again. Taiyinzi frowned and asked curiously, What is this Eternal Kingdom? Primordial World. Primordial World? Facing Gaia's answer, Taiyinzi, who had been bewildered since he was a secondary authority holder, couldn't help but have a philosophical thought. Chapter 1044. As they went deeper into this place, the temporary joint forces, the Taoist Association led by the 100 Tribulation Taoist and the Demon Realm led by Tsang Jinshui and Chu Xinghe, realized that the beach they landed on at the beginning, which was full of golden sand and rare treasures, was the poorest one. If the beach was filled with wealth that could make ordinary people go crazy, then the forest in front of the beach was filled with treasures that could make these Taoists and even demons go crazy. There were precious medicinal herbs that had been extinct for many years, minerals that could be used to refine high-level Dharma weapons, and spring water that was like spirit liquid. There were even many crystals that contained a large amount of strange power. They finally understood the popular saying, "Poverty limits imagination." This is actually a 1,000-year-old purple limbo grass? Oh my God! This is a sacred item that can help one's soul leave the body and travel the world. It's actually such a huge piece of land? This is a piece of copper, right? It's so pure and huge. Unbelievable, unbelievable. It wasn't just the Tao Association. For demons, they could also find many rare treasures in this strange forest. Tianshan silk fungus, a legendary ingredient. I only ate it when the patriarch's son was born. I even broke off a strand to make soup. The style seemed to be somewhat different. However, this did not stop the demons from coveting the treasures in this place. And this was only a corner of this forest. If they were to go deeper, what other unimaginable treasures would await them? In this place, even an inconspicuous stone on the ground could be a good thing that could not be exchanged for money. Even the 100 Tribulation Taoist and the Black Tortoise clan's Mingtushan, who had lived for countless years, could not help but be moved by this at this moment. After all, they were evergreen trees in the Tao world and the demon world, so they had seen many storms. Steady. Almost at the same time, Hundred Tribulation Taoist and Ming Tushan both yelled at their own people to stop. Of course, only some young monsters and Taoists acted irrationally because of the impact of the treasures in front of them. How could they, who had lived for so many years, not see the strangeness of this place? Where in the world could there be such a place where even a grain of sand was a treasure? They were having fun. This made these experienced Taoists and monsters wonder if they had fallen into some kind of illusion from the moment they entered this place. Elder, there's the smell of blood in front. Right at this moment, an azure dragon monster following Tsang Jinshui frowned. Everyone's expression changed slightly. Fellow cultivators, be careful. The Hundred Tribulation Taoists suggested, send some people to check it out. The Monster Association quickly agreed to the Hundred Tribulations Taoists' suggestion. Not long after, a joint team explored the area where the smell of blood came from. In fact, they did not have to wait for long before the exploration team returned. They brought back something not so good: corpses. Of the two corpses, one was a man wearing a Taoist robe. He was the sect master of a small sect from the Tao Association. As for the other corpse, it was a female member of the Vermilion Bird clan. Master! At this moment, a young Taoist flew out in shock and arrived beside the corpse of the Taoist. At the same time, a man beside Chu Xinghe also walked out in grief and came to the corpse of the female Vermilion Bird clan monster. Who killed her? This male Vermilion Bird clan monster stared at the members of the exploration team with a ferocious expression. They were the ones who brought back the corpse. Calm down. A member of the exploration team frowned at this moment. He was also the Green Dragon clan member who first discovered the smell of blood. When we found these two corpses, there were indeed traces of fighting nearby. However, other than these two who were already dead, we didn't find any traces of a third party. Besides, we found this thing beside them. At this moment, he carefully took out something. Flaming Earth Core Ganoderma? Ming Tushan held this plant in surprise. It's said that it can only grow in the Earth's core and nourish by lava. It's a treasure of extreme yang. This is a divine herb. The member of the exploration team nodded and said, "We don't know what this thing is, but there's no doubt that they died together for this Ganoderma. Because, when we found them, they were fighting each other to death." Ming Tushan and the Hundred Tribulations Taoist looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. This was probably the thing that the elders of these two factions were most worried about. Just like when the Emperor's edict first appeared, both Taoists and demons suffered casualties. If the administration and Shinryu weren't there to suppress the situation, Mount Tai would have become a battlefield between Taoists and demons long ago. The grieving male Vermilion Bird clan monster said faintly, "I was born with an ice-cold meridian. The elders said that I won't live past 100 years. I can only find extreme yang treasures to continue living. Jasmine did it for me." As he spoke, the male Vermilion Bird clan monster suddenly stood up and rushed to the corpse of the Taoist. "What do you want to do?" The young Taoist who called him master just now was extremely nervous. "Jasmine is the love of my life." "Your master?" The male Vermilion Bird clan monster laughed sorrowfully. "Even if he dies, I'll tear him into pieces." "Ah! How dare you!" The young Taoist was shocked and furious when he saw the male Vermilion Bird clan monster was about to punch his master's corpse like a madman. Heaven, earth, king, family, and master were like their second parent. As a disciple, how could he watch his master's corpse get destroyed so easily? Seeing that the two of them were about to fight due to hatred, Chu Xinghe from the Vermilion Bird clan monster said with a dark face, "Yen Lu, come back. Jasmine is already dead. There's no point for me to stay in this world." The male Vermilion Bird clan monster named Yen Lu laughed crazily. "Whoever stops me will die." "Ah! Do you really think the White Jade Qilin clan is easy to bully?" Evil creature, why should my master be torn into pieces after his death? The young Taoist was so angry that he laughed. No one saw it. Can't this demoness sneak attack first? I'll kill you. Evil creature, die. At that moment, the 100 Tribulations Taoist glanced at one of the vice presidents of the association, Perfected Huanyang. Chu Xinghe from the Vermilion Bird clan also frowned. Perfected Huanyang and Chu Xinghe attacked almost at the same time. Each of them knocked out 2 angry fellows at an extremely fast speed and brought them back. Chu Xinghe carried the unconscious Yan Lu back to their original place. Then, he looked at the 100 Tribulations Taoist and said naturally, Yan Lu lost his beloved, so he went to extremes. Don't blame him, 100 Tribulations Taoist. Taoist Chu, don't worry. The 100 Tribulations Taoist said seriously, who is right and who is wrong? After the investigation, I'll naturally give you an explanation. Song Jinshui suddenly said, everyone, there are treasures everywhere here. It's inevitable that there will be things that we need or want. There are many treasures here. If we continue walking, I'm afraid similar situations will happen again. How should he put it? The people of the Tao world and the members of the Demon Association were not all here. Some of them seemed to have been separated when they were moving. For example, the 2 corpses found in the forest. Taoist Song, what do you think? The 100 Tribulations Taoist asked directly. Song Jinshui said, let's join forces and plunder the treasures here first. When we find a way to leave, we'll discuss how to distribute them. Everyone was silent for a moment. In fact, when they moved to the beach, the Tao Association had fewer people than the demons. Although the terrifying Huang Baifu was not here, the other party still had the leaders of the 4 spirits of heaven and the 3 clans. As for their own side, there were only the 100 Tribulations Taoist and Perfected Huanyang. Below them were the younger generation. In terms of overall combat power, they were probably not the Demon Association's match. Of course, if they fought head-on, the Demon Association might not be able to benefit much. After a short discussion, the 100 Tribulations Taoist and Perfected Huanyang directly agreed. However, since they had decided to exploit the resources in the forest, everyone and the monsters immediately started working. They used all kinds of methods, and like a whale sucking in water, they couldn't wait to empty this huge treasure trove. In just a short moment, the treasures that had been plundered had already accumulated into a small hill. However, the big shots of the Tao Association and the Demon Association were still guarding here, so no one dared to secretly touch this treasure mountain. How stupid! Just as everyone was overjoyed, all of a sudden, a cold and clear voice clearly reached everyone's ears. The 100 Tribulations Taoist and Perfected Huanyang's faces slightly changed. As for the Demon Association, the representatives of the 4 spirits of heaven also frowned at this moment, because this voice appeared so suddenly. When did the person who spoke come close? No one on the scene could detect it. But very quickly, those with strength were able to distinguish the source of the sound. They all looked towards the source of the sound, only to see that on the branches of an ancient tree in the forest, a white figure had appeared at some unknown time. It was actually a beautiful woman with a cold expression. Like a fairy who walked out of the moon palace, her coldness seemed to be natural and extremely beautiful. But it also made people feel waves of coldness, and they couldn't think of anything else. 100 Tribulations Taoist, is this woman also from your Tao Association? Song Jinshui frowned. He had never seen this woman among the Demon Association, and she didn't have any demon aura. But the 100 Tribulations Taoist and Perfected Huanyang also shook their heads. They didn't know this woman in white either. Excuse me, who is this girl? Perfected Huanyang raised his head and asked in a calm voice. But the 100 Tribulations Taoist looked at this woman's face, as if he was thinking about something. The cold woman standing on the branch said indifferently, 100 Tribulations Taoist, if I were you, I wouldn't let them continue to mine the treasures in this forest, and I wouldn't even take anything. You're the leader of Kunlun, but don't you know that wealth can confuse people's hearts? The 100 Tribulations Taoist was startled, and then shook his head. Thank you for reminding me. But although wealth can confuse people's hearts, it's really useful. As long as it's handled properly, it's a blessing for both the Tao and demon realms. The woman in white sneered. Do you want to distribute it, or do you want to distribute it? How do you want to distribute it? Who gets more, who gets less, who gets better, who gets worse, who gets first, who gets later? Perfected Huanyang snorted. You don't need to worry about that. The Tao Association and the Demon Association will find the most reasonable solution. But we don't know where you came from, and you're trying to sow discord. What's your intention? The woman in white said indifferently, I'm just reminding you. It's not that easy to take the things here. What do you mean? The 100 Tribulations Taoist suddenly said. Besides, you give me a feeling of déjà vu. Have I seen you somewhere before? The woman in white said, In this forest, as far as the eyes can see, there are all kinds of treasures. Do you think so many treasures are naturally formed? I believe many of you have thought of this, but facing such treasures you always want to get lucky. I'll say it again, it's not that easy to take the things here. If you don't give me something of equal value, I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with the consequences. That's all I have to say. Take it or leave it, it's up to you. The woman in white waved her sleeves and stepped on the wind to leave. Don't be alarmist. Stay. If you don't make it clear, don't think of leaving here. Song Jinshui snorted coldly and leaped up, turning into a green flowing light, and dashed toward the woman in white. Song Jinshui stretched out his palm, and a huge green claw shadow broke out of his body, and was about to grab the woman in white. The woman in white snorted, and with a wave of her sleeves, an invisible force swept away Song Jinshui's claw shadow. That invisible force not only swept away Song Jinshui's claw shadow, but also bounced off Song Jinshui's body. With a bang, the patriarch of the Azure Dragon clan was swept to the ground by the white-clothed woman. Everyone couldn't help but be shocked. The woman in white stopped on the branch of another ancient tree, and the branch didn't move at all, as if she didn't have a limit. When did the Green Dragon clan become so unreasonable? Is this how Tsang Wuji taught you? The woman in white's face was cold. Song Jinshui's eyes were filled with anger. How dare you call my late father's name? Late father? The woman in white frowned, and then she seemed relieved. Song Wuji has already passed away. The world is changing, and the world is changing. Forget it, I won't argue with a junior like you. I'll say it again, the treasure here isn't easy to take, so take care of yourself. With that, the woman in white stepped on the wind again. But this time, no one stopped her. Song Jinshui's face was terrifyingly dark. He climbed up from the ground, and his hand was still holding an unknown ore, but this ore shattered in his hand. How dare you? This woman dares to call herself an elder, and humiliate the chief. A young man from the Green Dragon clan walked out angrily. Song Shirtian is untalented, but I'm willing to capture this woman for the chief. Song Jinshui didn't say anything. He wasn't really a reckless person, and just made a move to test the strength of this woman in white, but he didn't expect this woman in white to be so terrifying, and he didn't even have the strength to resist her. He was the clan leader of the Azure Dragon clan, one of the 4 spirits of the heavens. Even though the Azure Dragon clan was in decline, and the 4 spirits of the heavens were dominated by the White Tiger clan, as the saying goes, even a rotten ship still has 3 caddies of iron. Song Jinshui was indeed a true great demon of the demon clan. Chief Tsang, please calm down. Unexpectedly, Ming Tushan suddenly walked out. This woman. Maybe she really has the qualification to call herself an elder. Elder Ming, what did you say? Song Jinshui was stunned. Ming Tushan looked at 100 Tribulations Taoist, and said seriously, Taoist friend 100 Tribulations, you should remember. The origin of this woman, right? 100 Tribulations. Taoist nodded. Judging from her moves, I'm afraid she's from the Huanjin sect. Only the White Moon Fairy Yusanyang from 500 years ago can use the cultivation method of the Huanjin sect to such perfection, and she's a woman, Yusanyang? Song Jinshui frowned. He seemed to have heard this name somewhere, but he couldn't remember it at the moment. Ming Tushan heaved a sigh. The Huanjin sect is a very low-key sect, and I believe many people don't know about it. As for the White Moon Fairy from 500 years ago, I believe even fewer people know about her. But if we talk about her other identity, I'm afraid everyone here is familiar with it. Elder Ming, teach me. Song Jinshui took a deep breath. Ming Tushan said, before Yusanyang became the White Moon Fairy, her real identity was the Nine-Tailed Fox clan of the Demon Clan. You should know that the Nine-Tailed Fox clan is a deity of the same generation as our ancestors, the Green Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird and Black Tortoise. And Yusanyang is the third-generation descendant of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan. Except for the Black Tortoise clan, which of the 4 spirits of heaven in this generation didn't have a gap of more than 10 generations. Chapter 1045. Taiyinzi didn't know what Gaia meant by eternal kingdom, but it was possible that the club came from that place. Thinking about it this way, it could almost explain why he, as a Black Soul envoy, had the authority to command Gaia. This was a treasure trove, but it was most likely a warehouse of the club. The interior of the club was much more spacious than it looked from the outside. Then, wouldn't it be normal for the club to have a warehouse outside to store things? However, Gaia said that she didn't know Yu Yi, let alone the current boss. Thinking of this, there seemed to be only one possibility. This warehouse was the legacy of the previous boss. Gaia appeared earlier than Yu Yi. For some reason, the previous boss didn't pass this treasure trove to the current boss. Gaia didn't leave this place and didn't update the outside world. Gaia had stayed here for a long time. Perhaps something happened that made Gaia feel that something was amiss. For example, when he asked her about her master, he brought Gaia into a state of confusion. He called for the boss, but he called Gaia over. Was it because his call couldn't leave this place, or this place prevented the boss from investigating? The club was omnipotent, but the boss wasn't omnipotent. If this place belonged to the previous boss, and the previous boss had existed for a longer time, knew more secrets, and had greater power, then it was possible that the previous boss didn't want the next boss to know something. The simplest method was to purchase relevant services from the club. Taiyinzi didn't know the details, but if one were to make a guess, it was very likely that the information about this place would be separated from the perception of the future boss, who was also the current boss. This might require a lot of effort, but it should be possible for the previous boss to do so. The only question was why the previous boss wanted to hide this treasure trove. Taiyinzi felt that his imagination was getting clearer and clearer. This was all because of the various movies, novels, comics and so on the internet. According to the plot, this could be left behind by the previous boss as a test for the current boss. If the club is like a portable game, then when the boss reaches a certain level, he should be able to trigger this treasure trove. As for why Gaia has the image of a Lolita, it can be explained. It's just that the readers like Lolita stories. I've already seen through the truth. Gaia lowered its head and continued to wait. It turned a deaf ear to Taiyinzi's mutterings. Wait, if that's the case. Taiyinzi's mind flashed with a light, like a flash in the dark night, splitting his thoughts. If this is a test left by the previous boss, then after the test, I will naturally obtain the important things. But I'm here before the boss doesn't mean that. I'm here? Taiyinzi felt that this idea of his was very dangerous, but he couldn't help but keep thinking about it. The more he thought, the more he couldn't stop. He couldn't stop at all. For example, what is this test? For example, if I pass this test, what will I obtain? What if it's authority? That's right. Right now, I'm only at the second level of authority. There should be a few more levels of authority in front of me. Maybe I can surpass all the levels and obtain the highest authority? Gaia. If it's the highest authority, can I completely control you? Taiyinzi stared at the little girl with fanatical eyes. Gaia slowly raised her head and spoke in a mechanical tone. The highest authority has the authority to control everything in the treasure trove. Including you? Taiyinzi swallowed his saliva. Confirm. Wait for her. Obtain this treasure trove, then think of a way to cut off the boss's senses. Although he was the main god in the game world and could control the life and death of the players, that was only the game world. He needed to continuously lure the players from the real world. Moreover, the game world was still virtual. It only satisfied his spiritual needs. Everything in the treasure trove was real. Even if he didn't know what other treasures there were in the treasure trove, but if it was just one thing that could completely control Gaia, then it was already something incredible. That Wang, who was one of the 4 celestial races that could transform into a divine beast. He probably had a shocking identity in the outside world, but he was just acting like a pig in front of Gaia. Such a Wang who was completely subdued by Gaia in a few moves. He didn't even have the slightest bit of temper. The foreign source seems to be something that can be used to increase authority. Gaia, is there any foreign source in the treasure trove? Taiyinzi took a deep breath. Can I use the foreign source to increase my authority? Confirm. The foreign source percentage is used to increase the citizen level of Eternal Kingdom. Gaia nodded. Exchanging for the foreign source requires contribution point. Currently, the contribution points of the person with the second level authority is minus 550. Oh, I have 550. What? Negative? Taiyinzi was stunned. He felt that the number minus 550 was a little strange. Something seemed to flash through his mind, but he couldn't grasp what it was. However, just as Taiyinzi was about to obtain more information from Gaia, Gaia suddenly moved. Multiple subscribers have been found. Tracking complete. Trading system activated. Splitting. Just as Taiyinzi was about to split, the Gaia in front of him actually split into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8, until there were more than 100 Gaias. As for how many there were, Taiyinzi didn't count in detail. Because in an instant, the 100 Gaias soared into the sky at the same time. In the blink of an eye, they were galloping in the sky. It was a magnificent sight. Taiyinzi looked at them from afar until the 100 Gaias were no longer in sight. Not bad. It actually has the ability to split itself. Taiyinzi nodded. Then, his expression changed slightly. Damn. I haven't asked how to level it up. Taiyinzi hurriedly called out in his mind again. Because of his previous experience, he called out to Gaia instead of the boss. However, no matter how he called out, he didn't get a response. Could he only wait until Gaia finished dealing with the so-called subscribers? Regarding this, Taiyinzi couldn't help but frown. For Gaia, would it prioritize dealing with subscribers? Or was it just because of his status as a secondary authority holder that Gaia could ignore him? Or was Gaia actually a defective product, so she couldn't differentiate between priority and priority? As Taiyinzi thought about it, he suddenly turned his gaze to Wang Hu was being subdued by Gaia. From the beginning, Wang Hu didn't close his eyes. Although he couldn't speak, there was no doubt that he had been paying attention to Taiyinzi's actions. Taiyinzi sneered and walked directly to Wang Hu was imprisoned at this moment. Tyrant fist. At this time, Taiyinzi coldly snorted and moved his hands as if they were flying. 2 of his fingers stretched out straight. Look at my tyrant scissors. Ah! The scissor hands stabbed into Wang Hu's eyes. Wang Hu. At this moment, the muscles on Wang Hu's face were twitching crazily, and his veins were bulging. It was just that he was unable to move. However, Taiyinzi didn't seem to be satisfied with just one tyrannical scissors. At this time, he continuously released the names of the moves, and his hands were like phantoms as he crazily slapped Wang Hu's body. 18 dragons subduing palms. 6 pulses godly sword. 1,000 years of death. God's hand. 9 solitary swords. Starburst slash. Monkey steals peach. Heaven and earth, founding star. Eat my big curry stick. After an unknown amount of time, Taiyinzi finally stopped. He raised both of his hands and slowly pressed them down. At the same time, he let out a long sigh. Done and done. Feels good. The classic of mountains and seas, Eastern classic of Beyond the Sea recorded, in the country of green hills, the fox has 4 legs and 9 tails. At first, the fox was regarded as an auspicious beast. There was also an ancient saying, when the world is peaceful, it is auspicious. However, at some point in time, the image of the fox was distorted and demonized. There was also a saying that the fox ate humans. The woman in white, the Yu Sanyang that Ming Tushan spoke of, had already left. However, everyone recalled the words and actions of the woman in white, and every detail when she appeared. Impossible. This woman has no demonic aura at all. At this time, an older demon frowned and said, "She is basically a human. How can she be a descendant of the 9-tailed celestial fox?" Ming Tushan shook his head and said, "This is related to a secret, but actually, it's not really a secret. Everyone here has more or less heard of such a rumor, right? That place." That place? Which place? The younger Taoists were somewhat confused. Only the older Taoists and the older demons were thoughtful after hearing this. "That's right, that place." Ming Tushan nodded and said, "We don't know its background, let alone its origin. We can only use that place to describe it. We only know that it is a shop, and a shop that sells everything. According to legend, 500 years ago, Yu Sanyang bought herself the opportunity to be a human in that place. She bought the opportunity to be a human. In Taoist terms, it was to shed the demon fetus and be reborn as a human. However, this was almost impossible. The legendary Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal might be able to do it, and so might the legendary 6 paths of reincarnation in the netherworld. How is it possible? How can a demon turn into a human? Someone could not help but exclaim. But it's true. The person who said this was 100 Tribulations Taoist. He said slowly, "As the descendant of the 9-tailed celestial fox, Yu Sanyang's status in the demon clan is actually very high. Everyone should know that 1,000 years ago, the demon race had not declined. At that time, Yu Sanyang was a peerless great demon that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the leaders of the 4 spirit races and the greedy wolf star of the greedy wolf race. This was something that almost everyone in the Tao world at that time knew. However, this was something that happened 1,000 years ago. Over the past 1,000 years, the Kelowna Tao world had gradually declined, and there were not many who could survive from that era. 100 Tribulations Taoist was one, and Black Tortoise Clan's Ming Tushan was another. Even the city lord of Fengdu Ghost City, Xiao Shengma, had only become a ghost king in the later era and had not reached this period of history. About 500 to 600 years ago, Yu Sanyang suddenly disappeared. Not long after, she suddenly appeared and worshipped the Anatta Truth sect as a human, becoming the last disciple of the Anatta Truth sect's sect master at that time. 100 Tribulations Taoist recalled and said, "Not many people know about this matter. Everyone keeps this matter a secret because this matter has a great impact on both the Tao world and the demon world. Demons and humans were originally 2 different races. If demons could directly turn into humans, wouldn't the world be in chaos? Would the demon clan in the world be extinct one day?" Although this idea seemed to be a bit too far-fetched at that time, and it was a groundless worry. However, such an incredible thing as demons turning into humans had already happened, and it really made those big shots of the demon world think about all kinds of possibilities. Many of the younger generation were listening to Dark Tushan and 100 Calamity talk about ancient legends, giving them a good lesson on the history of the Tao demon realm. No one questioned the words of these two old men, because Hundred Tribulations Taoist demon world and Ming Tushan were completely the type of people who had lived long enough to see. However, no matter how high Yu Sanyang's seniority was, for the people present, they only remembered one thing: that place. That place had the means to turn demons, and even high-level nine-tailed celestial foxes, into humans. Wait. If this white-clothed woman is really the White Moon Fairy that the seniors are talking about, then she said that the things here can't be taken easily. Could it be that this is that place? This, in the legend, isn't that place in the form of a shop? No matter how you look at it, this place looks like a huge island. Thinking about it carefully, there are so many heavenly materials and earthly treasures here. Most of them have different storage conditions and living habits, but incredibly, they all grow together in this forest. Also, the gold and silver jewelry on the beach in front can't be naturally formed. Someone must have collected them. That's right, I'm afraid it's the owner of this place. But to have such unpredictable means, what is the origin of the owner of this place? Everyone looked at each other and discussed, as if they had completely forgotten their initial suggestion of looting. Only Ming Tushan and Hundred Tribulations Taoist demon world sighed inwardly. This was not something that they had just started to notice, nor was it something that they should start to think about now. There were so many treasures here, so there must be a owner. However, those who realized this point didn't mention it at the beginning. Everyone pretended not to know about it. Everyone felt that if they didn't mention it, these things would become ownerless. Taoist Hundred Tribulations, even you didn't mention it at the beginning, right? Ming Tushan said softly. Hundred Tribulations Taoist said indifferently, that's why I haven't become an immortal yet. I'm still a Tao querying realm cultivator, a mortal. Ming Tushan shook his head. Wasn't he the same? However, at this moment, something seemed to be flying toward them from above the forest. Not just one, but a large group. It was actually hundreds of little girls with long purple hair who looked exactly the same. While the Tao demons were still in shock, these hundreds of little girls landed beside each Tao demon at an extremely fast speed. Gaia, the manager of the prototype treasure house, at your service, esteemed subscriber. The same tone, the same words, came out of the mouths of these hundreds of little girls at the same time in front of everyone. Chapter 1046. Both the Taoist Association and the Monster Association had one each. No, each of them had an identical Gaia standing next to them. Gaia. They used the same intonation, the same tone, and even the same expression. The multiple voices overlapped, but there was no difference between them. Treasure house manager? Purchasers? What were they talking about? But in the next moment, someone remembered what the woman in white, Yu Sanyang, had said. It's not easy to get the things here. Could it be that these identical little girls were the owners of this place? Or were they closely related to the owners of this place? Please choose what you want. The overlapping voices rang clearly in the ears of the people and the monsters. Don't think that a little girl like this could make people defenseless and feel no threat at all. They suddenly appeared and accurately hit all the Taoists and monsters on the spot. Even the big shots had one standing beside each of them at this moment. Besides, Hundred Tribulation Taoist and the others seemed to be caught off guard as well. If they had shown up to attack at the beginning, how many of the Taoists and monsters in this place would be able to stand unharmed? Some things weren't suitable to be investigated, because once the investigation went beyond a certain limit, it would only bring about panic. As the saying goes, it's too dangerous to think carefully. This was the simple truth. Are you the manager of these treasures? Finally, a voice broke the silence among the crowd. It attracted everyone's attention in an instant. They found that this was a rather young-looking Taoist. His magic power waves were very weak. In this Penglai summit of Mount Tai, he might just be a bystander, or a lucky person brought by his sect to see the world. Confirm. But this time, only the little girl next to the young Taoist answered. As for the other little girls, Gaia, they didn't respond. So the Taoists and monsters started to ask the Gaias in front of them. The result was that all the Gaias could answer different questions at the same time. It seemed that these little girls were exactly the same but were actually different individuals? But if Taiyinzi was here, he probably wouldn't think so. After all, Taiyinzi had seen with his own eyes how Gaia had split herself. In other words, there were so many Gaias here, and they were carrying out more than one thought at the same time. Soon, the Taoist Association and the Monster Association understood some things from Gaias. For example, all the treasures in this forest did belong to this treasure house. In this treasure trove, they seemed to be the so-called subscribers. In other words, they could take these treasures away from the treasure trove through the means of purchase. They didn't get them for nothing, but they got them with a price. This was the psychological difference from what they had thought at the beginning. They could obviously pick them up with their abilities, so why did they have to pay? Greed was clearly not limited to ordinary people. Even cultivators who had stepped into the Tao world had the basic original sin of human nature. In other words, they were not believing in evil. Esteemed subscriber, what you have taken is a dark star crystal. This product has a one-hit special characteristic. Suddenly, one of the Gaias spoke slowly. At the same time, a man in his 40s in front of this Gaia, who was not wearing a Taoist robe but a Tang suit, had an ugly expression on his face. This was because not only did he feel the gaze of this Gaia, but he also had to bear the gazes of all the Taoists and monsters present. However, he suddenly slammed his palm down and said angrily, "Nonsense! I don't even know what the star crystal you're talking about is. Don't make things up." This Gaia said expressionlessly, "Scan. Scan result. The star crystal exists in the purchasers' bodies, in the stomach of living creatures." Isn't this Taotai sect's perfected eater? I heard that the Taotai sect has a special technique that can use the stomach to cultivate the power to swallow everything and extract the spirit chi of objects. It's a sect that can increase one's dermic powers as long as one eats. Don't tell me perfected eater is really. The voices of discussion gradually became more and more numerous. In just a moment, the background of this middle-aged man had already been exposed to a good extent. Perfected eater only pursed his lips and didn't say a word. However, his expression was slightly gloomy. The Gaia in front of him continued speaking emotionlessly. Question: will the purchasers purchase this star crystal? However, perfected eater simply ignored it. He snorted and walked away. Question: will the purchasers purchase this star crystal? I said that I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't touch anything. You'd better stop before you go too far. Warning: this action can be regarded as illegal theft. Warning: this action can be regarded as illegal theft. Damn it! Where did this insensible gatekeeper come from? Perfected eater scolded angrily. Without thinking, he waved his hand and slapped this Gaia's face. Slap. There was a very crisp sound of a slap. However, after this angry slap, perfected Eastern eating regretted it immensely. This meant that there were many legendary figures of the Tao world, young talents, and even big shots of the demon clan there. If he slapped him, he was afraid that perfected eater's reputation in the two realms would hit rock bottom. However, he was indeed forced to do so. This little girl's gaze made him tremble in fear. It was as if she had peeled off everything and looked directly at everything in his heart. That kind of instinctive resistance almost instantly broke through the line of rationality and reached the other side of impulsiveness. Taoist eater, think about it. Did you accidentally eat something and forget it? Taoist Master 100 Tribulations suddenly said. Eater was stunned at first. Then, he reacted. The 100 Tribulations Association's master was giving him a way out. He shuddered and wanted to salvage some of his reputation. However, if he followed the 100 Tribulations Association's instructions, he would be confirming his bad behavior. He could only go all the way. Perfected Eater laughed bitterly in his heart but said calmly, "Senior 100 Tribulations, don't tell me you also believe the nonsense of this thing of unknown origin?" Taoist Master 100 Tribulations frowned. How could he not see through Perfected Eater's thoughts? However, at that moment, Gaia, who had slapped Perfected Eater, suddenly straightened her face. There was no bright red handprint on her face. Instead, it was still white and flawless. Judgment: the subscriber committed theft. Judgment: the subscriber has committed a violent act of robbery. Judgment result: the subscriber will be eliminated. The destruction system will be uploaded. Destruction mode activate. At that moment, Perfected Eater's heart was beating non-stop for some reason. Cultivators would more or less get impulsive, and this was one of those moments. He was extremely flustered. "Wait, Perfected Eater, what did you take? How much do you need? I'll pay for you." Taoist Master 100 Tribulations realized something. He didn't have time to talk nonsense with Perfected Eater and hurriedly shouted. However, Gaia's appearance had begun to change. It was completed in an instant. Her long hair instantly turned pale white. At the same time, black tattoos that resembled the sharp teeth of wild beasts appeared on the left and right sides of her face. Her pair of delicate hands instantly turned into enormous blood-red metal claws. "What are you doing?" Perfected Eater was both shocked and furious. Gaia, who had changed her appearance, ignored him. Her figure flashed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was so fast that all the Taoists and demons present couldn't react in time. "Really?" Perfected Eater was still talking. However, the moment he finally finished speaking, Sage Easterneater's body felt as if it had been swept by a net made of sharp steel wires. His head, his shoulders, his body, and his limbs all cracked and fell to the ground. In the end, the only thing that remained in the memories of all the Taoists and demons was Perfected Eater's panicked gaze. His eyeballs had already fallen to the ground. The moment Sage Indiscriminate Eater's body shattered, a large red metal claw abruptly pierced into Sage Indiscriminate Eater's shattered body. When Perfected Eater's body completely shattered and turned into a neat and delicate pile of flesh on the ground, only Gaia, who had changed her appearance, was standing at the side. On her blood-red metal claw, there was a strange blue and white crystal about the size of a fist. "The thief has been eliminated. The goods have been returned." Perfected Eater wasn't particularly famous in the Tao Association. However, in terms of strength, he wasn't at the bottom. He was probably at the middle level. However, he didn't even have the strength to fight back before his body was shattered by this terrifying little girl. This scene landed in the eyes of all the Dao Yao, causing them to gasp. If all the Gaias here had the same ability? This was another question that would make people feel fear once they continued to investigate. Question: does the subscriber want to buy? Almost at the same time, the 7 or 8 Gaias began to face the Taoists and demons standing in front of them and asked the same question. The only difference was that the treasures they were referring to were different. These guys were probably like Perfected Eater. When no one was paying attention, they secretly used their own methods to hide something, right? I was just curious, so I took it out to take a look. I didn't hide anything. A demon from the Black Tortoise clan shook his clothes in a panic. Immediately, a crimson plant fell from his clothes. This Black Tortoise demon quickly picked up this strange plant and held it with both hands, extending it to the Gaia in front of him. At the same time, the other Taoists and monsters also took out the things they had hidden in different places. At this time, who would care about the problem of reputation? As for the unified looting and distribution that Azure Dragon Song Jinshui had mentioned, who cared about that? Motherf ** Ker. A bunch of useless guys. I can't stand it anymore. A furious voice was heard. It was a member of the White Tiger clan. He seemed to be a guard who had been following the white tiger young master, Huang Baifu. However, after moving to this place, the white tiger young master, Huang Baifu, had disappeared. As a result, the white tiger clan here was temporarily without a leader. As the saying goes, treasures belong to those who are capable. The monster grinned and took out a strange fruit. He laughed loudly and said, "Buy? Why should this be yours just because you say so? I picked it myself. It's mine." This arrogance was the same as Huang Baifu's. It was unknown how strong this tiger demon was compared to Huang Baifu's peerless ferocious strength. This was what most people thought. Don't think that you can establish your dominance by killing Eater. This demon sneered. What is Eater? His magical power came late, it was impure and weak to the point of dying. There are so many Taoist demons here. Do you think I'm afraid of you freaks? Finished speaking, quite a few members of the White Tiger clan approached this demon's side one after another. This demon cupped his hands toward Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe, clan leader Tsang, ritual master Chu. Although my young master is not here, we can't go back empty-handed after entering a treasure mountain. Why don't we unite? Perhaps it was because Yu Sanyang's background was so frightening that Song Jinshui was much more silent after this setback. In the face of the White Tiger tribe's suggestion, he only frowned and did not immediately answer. Even Chu Xinghe was silent at this moment. It could be seen that the Green Dragon clan and the Vermilion Bird clan seemed to be on the same side, at least for now. There was a sense of unity. Speaking of which, Huang Baifu's guard wasn't stupid. At least he knew to pull everyone together to snatch the treasures instead of announcing the ownership of the treasures like Huang Baifu. Let's listen to how these treasures are sold first. Black Tortoise Ming Tushan said slowly, "Young man, don't be too impulsive. Think thrice before you act. Don't drag everyone into the abyss of suffering." "Humph. I knew your Black Tortoise clan was afraid of trouble. 1,000-year-old tortoise, 1,000-year-old tortoise, you're right." The White Tiger demon snorted again. At this moment, just as he looked at Ming Tushan and said this, he unexpectedly punched Gaia, who was beside him. This punch couldn't be compared to Huang Baifu's tyrant fist, but its momentum wasn't inferior at all. Only a bang could be heard. Gaia, who was in front of him, was directly smashed to the ground by his punch. The ground shattered, sand and stones flew, and a large amount of smoke and dust was raised. As for Gaia, who had suffered this punch, her body sank into the ground. Her neck was twisted in an abnormal manner. She looked like a broken doll. Nothing much." He abruptly took half a step back. The broken Gaia's head was like a rusty gear, twisting back little by little, and her body slowly rose up. Judgment. The subscriber is violently snatching the treasures. Judgment result. The subscriber will be eliminated. Destruction system uploaded. Destruction mode, activate. It wasn't just this Gaia. At this moment, all the Gaias present were saying the same thing. It was as if countless activate were ringing in their ears, and the whole world was covered by activate. Chapter 1047. A large amount of strange black patterns appeared on their faces, and their purple pupils emitted a biting cold light. The gorgeous purple dresses of the Gaias began to shrink and transform, finally turning into a strange battle suit that clung to every inch of their skin. This made their bodies even more slender, with golden ratio legs and slightly bulging chests, and huge claws that didn't match their size at all. Symmetrical light wings grew out from their hands, and behind the light wings, a circle full of complicated patterns appeared. They lined up in the air like an army. They are simply like battle weapons. It was unknown if it was the voice of the Taoist or the monsters, because at this moment, everyone's attention was focused on the Gaias. However, there wasn't much time left for the Taoist Association and the Monster Association to think and react, because, after the Gaias finished transforming, they all swooped down. "Not good," Taoist Master Huanyang shouted, because the Gaias were too fast. In front of Taoist Master Huanyang, a Gaia swung her claws down. In the blink of an eye, Taoist Master Huanyang only had time to wave his magic item to barely block the attack of this Gaia. His legs were instantly slammed into the ground. He didn't have time to care about anything else. At this moment, screams could be heard coming from Sage Huanyang's side. He couldn't even tell if the screams came from the Taoist Association or the monsters. How many people were torn apart by the Gaia's swooping attack like Taoist Master Messy Eater, and how many people blocked the attack? Taoist Master Huanyang didn't dare to think too much, and he didn't have time to think about it, because the Gaia attacking him didn't give him any time to breathe. Just like a brilliant warrior, after Taoist Master Huanyang blocked the first attack, the Gaia moved again, her body completely violated the laws of physics, instantly accelerating to an unimaginable degree. Taoist Master Huanyang only felt a terrifying pain in his abdomen. The Gaia in front of him used a pair of scarlet metal claws to block the magic sword in his hand. At the same time, its body leaned back and both legs kicked out, simultaneously stepping on Taoist Huanyang's abdomen. Bang! Retreating, and crashing through countless ancient trees, Reverend Huanyang's body finally sank into a rock. He felt that his bones were like those of an old man with osteoporosis, as if they would break if he moved them. Huanyang spat out a mouthful of blood, and his vision became blurry. He looked in front of him. He had smashed his way backward, creating a long hole in the lush ancient forest. But what about Gaia? Just as he was thinking to himself, Taoist Huanyang's vision blurred, and the terrifying Gaia appeared in front of him. Gaia's expression was ice-cold, and the huge scarlet metal claw once again swung towards Reverend Huanyang. This Gaia know, if all the Gaias had the same power, then wouldn't all the Tao demons here? Taoist Master Huanyang shuddered and instinctively swung his magic sword at Gaia's huge metal claw. Ding! The magic sword slashed at Gaia's huge scarlet claw. What made Taoist Master Huanyang despair was that the magic sword that had accompanied him for many years only left a shallow cut on Gaia's huge scarlet claw, but his magic sword broke at that moment. Taoist Master Huanyang's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly made 2 hand seals on his legs. Divine travel. The Tao technique that increased the speed of his legs made his body several times lighter. Instead of advancing, he retreated and pulled away from Gaia. After the magic sword in his hand broke, it was useless, even more useless than an ordinary broken sword. Thus, Taoist Master Huanyang could only throw it on the ground with heartache. Nevertheless, in the Tao world, he was a Tao cultivator that was infinitely close to the Tao querying realm. In the entire Kelowna Tao world, Taoist Master Huanyang was confident that he could enter the top 20 and could be considered one of the strongest Taoists in the world. After cultivating for hundreds of years, he had experienced many tough battles. He quickly recovered and adjusted his state of mind. A Taoist's strongest point was not his martial arts, but his martial arts were used for self-defense. A Taoist's strongest point was naturally his powerful Tao technique. Gaia, on the other hand, was the type that leaned towards close combat. As long as he could seal her and prevent her from getting close, there might be other ways to defeat her. However, he did not know how the President, 100 Tribulations Taoist, and the others were doing. However, in that split second of distraction, the Gaia in front of him had already raised a scarlet claw. While Taoist Master Huanyang was astonished, the raised scarlet claw began to change shape again, splitting, shrinking, rotating, and reassembling. How long did it take? 1 second? 2 seconds? Or 3 seconds? After the transformation, the scarlet claw disappeared and was replaced by a huge round cannon muzzle. On the huge cannon muzzle, a large number of short light beams gathered rapidly and shot out in the next moment. Damn it! Who said that this horrible thing only had close combat ability? The blazing white light beam shot out from Gaia's cannon muzzle. A strong light flashed, and Taoist Master Huanyang could only rely on his instincts to dodge the light beam attack. Taoist Master Huanyang even felt that he was lucky to be able to dodge it. However, after the light beam flew past him, it did not disappear at the end of the shooting range as expected. Instead, it disappeared due to the exhaustion of energy. The light beam was like a living thing. At the end of the shooting range, it suddenly twisted and made a parabola before shooting up into the sky. The moment it shot up into the sky, the light beam split into hundreds of light beams, twisting and turning in the sky before pouring down. A large-scale yoi attack. It was like a meteor shower falling down. Boom, 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 boom. At this moment, Taoist Master Huanyang felt the so-called despair. At this moment, in the sky above the forest, Taoist Master Huanyang was not the only one who suffered this attack. Dozens of Gaias rushed up into the sky at the same time. Their huge scarlet claws had already changed their shape. Those terrifying light beams were gathering at the mouth of their cannons. Hundreds and thousands of tiny light beams fell down like a storm. The degree of density made it impossible for anyone to find any space to dodge. Only the rumbling sound of despair could be heard. Boom, boom, boom. After a long time of bombardment, the Gaias finally stopped. The forest below had been razed to the ground. The treasures coveted by the Tao and demon world and the primitive ancient forest had completely disappeared. What was left was a barren, yellowish land that had been bombarded. Its surface was uneven like the surface of the moon. At that moment, some of the Gaias were hovering in the air, while others were standing on the ground that had been completely destroyed. Their eyes kept flashing, and a large number of complex symbols kept appearing in their pupils. They seemed to be investigating those who were still alive. The gazes of the Gaias swept over the fallen figures on the ground. When one of the Gaia's gaze swept over a figure, it stopped. This guy fell to the ground, but didn't lose consciousness, and tried to stand up with difficulty. But he was so weak, his face was full of dirt, and his left arm was broken in the last round of bombardment. In this tragic situation, his eyes were full of fear. Facing these indifferent things, his mind was on the verge of collapse. When he noticed that one of the Gaias was looking at him, the only thing he could do was to scream in horror. He screamed in horror, staring at his legs in horror, and forced himself to move backward. But at this moment, this Gaia had raised the cannon on its left arm, and its eyes were emotionless as a beam of light shot out, leaving a small hole in the center of his forehead. He directly fell to the ground. And all of this, he was afraid that he would never be able to stand up again. The rest of the Gaias continued to search. They didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. Because the number of people from both the Taoist and monster realms who fell here was different from the number at the beginning, under their concentrated attacks, a dozen or so escaped. It was very likely that they were hiding in the forest ahead. So, the dozen or so Gaias directly flew into the forest ahead, and the remaining Gaias began to fly toward a common target. They kept fusing and finally turned back into one. The only Gaia left behind looked at the destroyed environment and seemed to be in deep thought. Repair, this seemed to be the result she came to after thinking about it. So, she slowly extended her right hand, and next to her right hand, a distorted space opened. She took out a strange container from the distorted space, something like a shower head. There was a small screen on the container, and a control interface. Gaia pressed on the interface, and the container shot out a pale white light. Gaia held the container in her hand and began to use the beam of light to sweep the destroyed area around her. Not long after, Gaia flew into the air and tipped the container in her hand. Some colorful light rain sprinkled down from the container. And on the ground, after absorbing the light rain, green vegetation began to rapidly grow. Everything was recovering. He could already hear the sound of his heartbeat. It was so clear and so fast. Hiding in an unknown bush, he felt as if his throat had been burned by fire. At the same time, an intense pain came from his shoulder. On his shoulder, there was a wound as thick as a wrist, and blood was madly flowing out. That was a terrifyingly large-scale attack. His companions didn't even have time to react before their bodies were directly wiped out by those powerful beams of light. The only thing he could be thankful for was that he knew how to use the earth escape technique. Before the attack arrived, he had dived into the ground and thus avoided a disaster, but his shoulder was still hit by those beams of light. He carefully peeped at the mottled sky through the dense shadows of the forest, because he knew that at least 20, that thing, had already flown into the forest and were searching for him. Maybe he was not the only one who had successfully escaped from that destructive attack. He needed to do something, he needed to leave this terrifying place. At this moment, even if there was a rare treasure growing less than half a meter away from where he was hiding, he didn't have the intention to take it away, or rather, he didn't dare to have any thoughts. He was afraid that once his greed rose, he would directly attract that thing. At that time, what awaited him was probably only death. The sound of his breathing had been reduced to the lowest, and he needed to calm his breath as fast as possible, even if it was because of the rapid heartbeat caused by fear. Still lying on the ground, he crawled forward step by step, crawling forward in the weeds that were half the height of a person. But at this moment, his body seemed to be sucked in by something. He only felt that he seemed to have fallen into a place that was completely dark. The whole process didn't last long. When he realized that the falling had stopped, he saw a few figures walking towards him. "Don't come over! Don't!" He shouted in fear, and his rationality that was on the verge of collapse completely lost its control at this moment. He was so frightened that he forgot that he had cultivated for more than 100 years and his own abilities. Like a drowning person, he actually waved his arms wildly. "Calm down, Taoist Huang Mu. Look carefully, it's me." At this moment, light appeared in this dark place, and he, after a piercing pain in his vision, Taoist Huang Mu finally saw a few familiar faces clearly. 100 Tribulations Taoist Huanyang on the demons Mingtu, there was a member of the Taoist Association and another demon. President, Vice President. At this moment, Taoist Huang Mu was both sad and happy, and felt like he had survived a disaster. He couldn't help but cry bitterly. "Try not to make too much noise." At this moment, Mingtu Shan reminded this agitated survivor, "Those things are still here. This old man doesn't know if they can discover us." At this moment, Taoist Huang Mu took a deep breath and began to look around. The space here wasn't big, only about 20 square meters. It was like a room. "What is this place?" Taoist Huang Mu couldn't help but ask subconsciously. Mingtu Shan said, "This is the inside of this old man's tortoise shell. It's considered a life-saving ability of mine. It can help us move stealthily underground and isolate the inside from the outside world. When we were moving stealthily, we discovered you, so we hurriedly took it in for you. Thank you for this treasure, Taoist Tushan." 100 Tribulations Taoist couldn't help but sigh at this moment. "I only escape. If you didn't escape as well, no one would be able to save you." Mingtu Shan shook his head. "It's your ability to survive the disaster just now." Ability? Everyone looked at their only companions, then at Mingtu Shan's tortoise-shell ability? So many fairies in both the Taoist and demon worlds were almost all slaughtered by that thing in an instant. Now, it was very likely that only these people in the tortoise shell were left. Chapter 1048. They used something similar to a clay bomb to open the tomb. A muffled sound was heard, and then the soil suddenly sank a little. After that, Mr. Seven's men began to dig in this area. There was no such thing as a Luoyang shovel. It was said that it was already an era of high technology, and that kind of ancient tool was only used by experts in small workshops or by some lone wolves. After digging out the entrance, they began to test the oxygen content in the cave and eliminate the gas inside. No one knew if there were any harmful substances in the ancient tomb that had been silent for more than 1,000 years due to chemical reactions. The waiting time was not too long. The map that Mu Xianghua brought was said to be left behind by Su Fu, and there was a secret passage that led directly to the main tomb. According to the record of this secret passage on the map, if converted to modern units of measurement, the distance was about 3,000 meters. Not only did they build a huge tomb underground, but they also set up countless mechanisms in the tomb and a secret passage of more than 3,000 meters. This was unimaginable with the technological level of that time. It was like the Great Wall or the Pyramid. According to the current level of knowledge, I'm afraid that countless lives could be used to make up for the lack of technology in such an ancient and difficult building. Before leaving, when talking about the level of construction, Zhang Qingrui expressed such a feeling. Probably only the power of a country could be used. If not for the imperial family, I'm afraid they wouldn't have such strength. Mr. Seven said casually at this time. He was more concerned about the situation inside the tomb. After all, the Li family's long-cherished wish of the Qin Shi Huang Mausoleum was 1,000 years ago. As early as the Song dynasty, the ancestors of the Li family had already participated in the excavation of the Qin Shi Huang Mausoleum, but that wasn't the actual Qin Shi Huang Mausoleum. It's hard to do with manpower. If you want to do it, you can only rely on more manpower and blood, and even more sacrifices. But Song Howren's mouth made a smacking sound at this time. He was chewing betel nut. This kind of betel nut was obtained from an old fellow of the Li family's team. Song Howren easily became friends with others. But what if technology other than manpower can also achieve this? Or some part that can replace manpower? Young Master Song, you jest. At this time, Mr. Seven smiled and said, such an underground palace, even with modern technology, has many problems that need to be overcome. The structure of the mountain, the solidification of the mud, the transportation of materials, the choice of support points, and so on, as well as the overall design of the palace. Just these early preparations alone would probably take several years of investigation and research, not to mention the various problems they would encounter after the construction began. Building such a huge underground tomb is not something that can be done in 3 to 5 years. And how long has it been since the unification of the 6 nations until the death of the first emperor? I'm just saying. Song Howren smiled and didn't say anything else. He grabbed a bit of soil near the entrance and rubbed it on his palm. Then, he threw the soil into the hole. Song Howren patted the dirt off his hands and smiled. It's about time to go in. Who's going first? Let's do it. Mr. Seven said seriously, we're more familiar with the tombs in the country. Song Howren didn't have any objections. After nodding, he made a gesture to the group of Song family disciples. These disciples of the Song family moved quickly and were disciplined. They also prepared some infrared night vision goggles and gas masks for the Li family's men. Song Howren's good intentions quickly gained the favor of the Li family's men. So, the Li family's men also took out some small toys and gave them to the Song family's disciples. They were all strange things. For example, an unknown beast horn, an amulet that was folded into a triangle, and some black donkey hoof. On the other hand, the Suzuki Kai people seemed to be completely ignored. In fact, except for Suzuki and his son, several senior cadres of Suzuki Kai were also very indignant. But they looked at the excellent equipment of the Song family and then looked at the things in their hands. Basically, most of them were empty-handed. However, some of them had some knives. These weapons were already very powerful among the forces of Japan. They really couldn't take them out. As for the Li family, although their equipment wasn't as exaggerated as the Song family's disciples, the tomb was completely opened by the Li family's men. They were rich in experience and talked cheerfully. They really couldn't even say a word. Even the few high-ranking officers felt that they were useless, let alone the large group of subordinates. It was not a problem for these fellows to bully others, collect debts, and even fight in groups, but to come all the way to this place to dig up the tombs of other people's ancestors, it was really a bit too much for them to do. The only purpose of so many Suzuki Kai people was probably to make up the number of people and make up the scene. I really don't understand what the master's intention is. Several senior cadres began to quietly discuss at this moment. Is it really just for the sake of making up the scene? You fool! Think carefully. What's the use of so many people in a broken tomb? The professionals of the Song family and the Lee family are enough to look for treasures. We are very likely to be a burden. Then tell me, why did the master and the young master ask so many of us to come? Big brother, you mean, sure. Don't forget what we do. I think the master and the young master's intention is definitely not now, but later. Later. Does the master and the young master mean that after they dig up all the treasures, then we will? This person made a throat-slitting gesture. Surprisingly, this actually got the approval of all the department. Demon on demon. This immediately made them, who were bored out of their wits, excited. But the Song family's people's equipment is so exaggerated. Can we rob them? That's hard to say. One of the cadres narrowed his eyes. You see, they are starting to enter the tomb one after another. There are not many people left to guard the tomb, but they left a lot of equipment. Wait, we will do this, and then this, and this. That's a good idea. Let's talk to the master and the young master first? The voices of conspiracy. While the several Suzuki Kai cadres were secretly plotting something, Haruko Suzuki and Yuichi Suzuki, who were meditating on the other side, were very confused. What was wrong with the brains of these Suzuki Kai thugs? They were very imaginative. Natsuki Suzuki had brought so many members of the Suzuki Society with her. Her purpose was very clear. She wanted to provide them with food and a body that could be swapped at any time. She also wanted to use the popularity of her people to cover up her presence. When necessary, she could even use them as shields. But actually, this works too. Haruko Suzuki's eyes suddenly turned. This immediately made Yuichi Suzuki look at him in confusion. Haruko Suzuki chuckled and said, I still can't find out where the human girl's guardian is. But I believe that this person must be hiding nearby. Since these Suzuki Kai idiots like to cause trouble, they might be able to alert the guardian hiding in the dark. Aren't you afraid that the other party will be unhappy and deal with you? You should know that you are very weak right now. Yuichi Suzuki frowned. Haruko Suzuki said casually, Don't worry, the other party probably hasn't found out yet. Otherwise, how can we still be safe? Although I didn't deliberately hide the soul thread that I planted on the human girl's body, the other party must be very clever to be able to find it and directly erase it. This kind of guy must be very confident in his own strength. Once he found out about us, how could he still be alive? Yuichi Suzuki thought about it and felt that Hakuda's words were somewhat reasonable. Not long after, several high-ranking Suzuki Kai officers quietly came to the side of Yuichi Suzuki and Haruko Suzuki, and tactfully told them about the matter that they had discussed at the last minute. Originally, these officers were somewhat nervous, because Haruko Suzuki had always been very cautious. If he really wanted to do something like this, he would definitely make full preparations and wouldn't wait for them to take the initiative to ask. But what they didn't expect was that the master and the young master were very happy to agree. On the other hand, the Lee family had sent several old masters to explore the tomb first, and the group of people were waiting outside for the news of the exploration ahead. At this moment, Song Howren was standing with his eyes closed, as if he was resting, but he suddenly opened his eyes, and a faint smile appeared on his face in the dark night. At this time, Song Howren summoned a soldier of the Song family, and whispered in his ear, There are 3 paths under the tomb. The map shows that the secret path is on the left. If there is no accident, the Lee family should be directly connected to the main tomb through the secret path. Later, let people explore the middle path and the right path in private. Just be careful, there aren't many traps on the way, our equipment can detect them. The main thing is that if you find anything valuable on the way, bring it back to me, especially things like ancient books with words, understand? Understood, military advisor. Song Hauran nodded and then narrowed his eyes. In addition, Suzuki's group seems to be up to something, let the brothers who stay behind pay attention. If they want to do something, just deal with it, do it cleanly. Our equipment is very expensive. The soldier seemed to have realized something, and then he sneered, and then said, Do we need to do anything else, military advisor? Let me think. Song Hauran pondered for a while, and then suddenly smiled brightly. Let people prepare champagne and women at the place where we stay. After we go back, let the brothers relax. The soldier laughed in a low voice, and then walked away from Song Hauran's side. Most of the time, the warriors from the village liked this young master. Apart from his terrifying ability, the most important thing was that he understood the needs of his subordinates very well. Furthermore, he was able to get along well with them. This was a completely different feeling from the supreme dignity of his father. A master who could always explore the most dangerous places with the soldiers. For the soldiers, how could they not like him? You seem to be very happy? Luocio walked over slowly at this time. Oh, don't you want to see them open the tomb? Song Hauran patted Luocio's arm. He really liked this little guy who had just returned to the family. Because he found something similar to himself in Luocio's eyes, curiosity. Curious about everything, fearless and bold, it was really to Song Hauran's liking. Song Hauran spat out the beetle nut in his mouth, and then smiled evilly. Little Luocio, are you afraid of seeing blood? Song Hauran's eyes seemed to be a little bright, and he looked directly at Luocio's eyes. Even if I don't say some things, I believe you have already thought about it, carefully thought about it. Actually, the old man and I have investigated your birth. You were born in a domestic police family. In fact, we don't know how much sense of justice you have, and what you think about illegal things. But as you can see, the Song family does these things. Luocio didn't say anything. He knew that Song Hauran had more to say after this chatterbox. At this time, Song Hauran said, Relatives who share the same ancestors' blood as you, their hands are stained with blood and are dirty. We can't wash our hands clean, and it will only be stained with more blood in the future. So, you who have accepted us, can you get used to it? Or do you plan to experience it once? Luocio also looked at Song Hauran and said softly, Song Ying has been working hard to expand the Song dynasty group. She said that this may be a way out for the Song family in the future. Song Hauran was stunned. He looked at Luocio, and didn't speak for a while. After a while, Song Hauran sighed, patted Luocio's shoulder and said softly, You know, now that I think about it, why did I meet you in Brazil? It's really incredible. But what made me hit on you, I still can't figure it out. It seems that this is a kind of arrangement. My intuition is very accurate most of the time, but I have never had such intuition with you. He walked past Luocio and whispered in his ear, Don't care about Dad, don't care about Song Ying. How much can I trust you? Don't worry, so far I still like you guys very much. Luocio gave such an answer that surprised Song Hauran. Song Hauran frowned thoughtfully, then nodded. Be careful later, don't leave my side. If there is any danger, I won't care about your female classmate, I will only care about your life. There shouldn't be any problem. Luocio turned around and smiled casually. His fingers, which were hidden behind his back, quietly snapped. Master Suzuki, young Master Suzuki, the old master of the Li family came back and said that there is no problem, we can officially enter the tomb. Mu Xianghua ran back at this time. Yuichi Suzuki and Haruko Suzuki looked at each other, nodded, and stood up. As one of the leaders, after they met up with the Zhang family and the Song family, they were the first group of people to enter the tomb together. A folding ladder had been set up at the entrance of the cave. Yuichi Suzuki and Haruko Suzuki followed the old master of the Lee family and climbed into the tunnel. As for the Song family's Song Hauran and the others, they followed behind. But when they landed, Haruko Suzuki suddenly stood still, and his face changed dramatically. At the same time, Yuichi Suzuki's face suddenly became ugly. He hurriedly glanced at Hakata, and his low voice sounded a little cold. "What the hell is going on?" Haruko Suzuki's voice was not stable at this time, and it seemed to be a little panicked. "I don't know." All the marks disappeared. And what was worse was that, for some reason, Hakata's soul was completely imprisoned in Haruko Suzuki's body, and it could not leave at all. Chapter 1049. In the darkness, Haruko Suzuki felt someone pat him hard on the shoulder. This caused his reaction to be a little too big. He abruptly turned around, his gaze sweeping past like a venomous snake. This made the heart of the Lee family's master, who was leading the way and patting him on the shoulder, skip a beat. For a moment, he thought he was not looking into a human's eyes. "What are you doing?" Haruko Suzuki's voice was low, seemingly containing suppressed anger. The Lee family's master frowned and said, "This is the young master of the Suzuki family, right? I saw that the two of you were standing still, so I wanted to ask if there was a problem." Haruko Suzuki shook his head and said casually, "It's just that it's too dark suddenly, so I'm not used to it." Looking at Haruko Suzuki's answer, Yuichi Suzuki, or rather, Lienjin knew very well that Hakata's reaction was entirely due to fear. Now, he and Hakata basically existed in the state of souls, each relying on the Suzuki family's father and son. This kind of reliance could be changed at any time, which made them very convenient and safe. However, the moment they entered the tomb, their souls were imprisoned in the Suzuki family's father and son. This meant that they had become targets for someone else. Moreover, this other person had even sealed their souls without them noticing, and had also quietly erased the hundreds of marks that Orochi had made. Could it be this guardian is at the Tao Fruit realm? Haruko Suzuki sighed and looked around nervously. As far as I know, ever since the immortal path was cut off, Kelowna hasn't had a Tao Fruit realm demon immortal or a demon immortal equivalent to the Tao world realm for more than 2,000 years. Yuichi Suzuki frowned and said in a low voice, "If there is, when did they start to live until now before the path to immortality was cut off?" Haruko Suzuki laughed bitterly. It seemed that all his guesses about the guardian behind the human girl were just wishful thinking. The guardian probably didn't even bother to make a move. However, was this a warning, or did it mean something else? Erasing those markings, at the same time imprisoning his and Lienjin's souls, other than that, not restricting their movements, and at this moment, not exposing them, this kind of confusing attitude really made Hakata feel uneasy. It had even considered giving up on this mission and giving up on the Marquis Pearl that was crucial to it. In short, it had to protect its own life first. As the saying goes, where there's life, there's hope. However, this thought didn't last long. What made Hakata and Lienjin's expressions change drastically again was that even though their souls were imprisoned in the Suzuki father and son, at this moment, they felt that their powers were increasing exponentially. No, it was not increasing. Since leaving Yenwu's world, the two of them had been at the lowest level of their abilities. At this moment, they clearly felt that their powers were recovering rapidly. They didn't know how much time had passed. It could be just a breath's time, or it could be just a few seconds. In short, they had already recovered more than half of their original powers. However, they still couldn't leave the Suzuki father and son's bodies. Just as the two of them were in a state of shock, a voice rang out in their hearts at the same time. It was ethereal and unreal. After hearing it, they couldn't remember the voice, but the content of the voice was so profound that it seemed to be imprinted in their hearts. It's about time. Let's recover to this point, but this is only a temporary recovery. I'll have to trouble the two of you to protect me during this excavation. If they can come back safely, after leaving the ancient tomb, I'll reduce the recovery rate by 70%, and the rest will be your reward. How about it? If you agree, please nod your head. Hakata and Lianzhen instantly looked at each other. What they couldn't see was not only the surprise in each other's eyes, but also the fear in each other's eyes. The recovery of their powers wasn't wrong. The surging power that surged out from all parts of their bodies wasn't fake, so they were unusually excited, but it was also because of this that they felt terrified. There was no contact, and there wasn't even the slightest bit of strange phenomenon around them. But their powers recovered as if they were born out of thin air. It was like creating something out of thin air, creating something out of nothing, I'm afraid. Haruko Suzuki took a deep breath at this moment, and his voice trembled a little. Even a real immortal can't do it. Hakata understood that he, who had once stolen part of the fragment world's power in Yenwuyue's world, couldn't do this in Yenwuyue's small world, let alone in the main world. Lianzhen was silent at this time, but his eyes were cold. He didn't like the feeling of being controlled by others, which reminded him of the countless years he had been carrying the fate of the greedy wolf star. What should we do? Haruko Suzuki asked in a low voice at this time. Yuichi Suzuki slowly closed his eyes, and then nodded his head. Seeing this, Haruko Suzuki frowned, but he had to follow and nod his head. The voice that rose from the bottom of their hearts had disappeared without a trace, so they couldn't find the source at all, but their powers didn't fade because of this. As for going back on their words, with their restored powers, how could they dominate the whole scene? Hakata wasn't that stupid. That horrible guy recovered his and Lianzhen's powers out of thin air, so it would only take a thought to kill him. Going back on their words? Would they give you time to go back on your words? So, you think you can turn the tables and kill them? It didn't exist. As for the Suzuki Kai people who planned to rob the Song family's equipment at the beginning? Forget it. In front of that foul power. At this time, Suzuki Haruna let out a sigh of relief and resolutely walked towards Mr. Seven. After a while, Mr. Seven returned to Zhang Qingrue's side with a strange expression. At this moment, Song Haoran and Luoqiu had already climbed down the ladder. Zhang Qingrue didn't want to hide it from the Song family, so she asked directly, "Uncle Seven, what did the young master of the Suzuki family say to you?" Mr. Seven's expression was still strange. He looked at them and hesitated. He said that if we encounter any danger on the way, we can let his people go first, and they will try their best to ensure our safety. Even if it's necessary, they will help us go back safely, even if it's a corpse. What? Zhang Qingrue's small mouth slightly moved, almost thinking that she had misheard. Mr. Seven shook his head at this time, and said inconceivably, "I also thought that I misheard, but this young master of the Suzuki family really emphasized it in front of me again and again. I really don't know what medicine he is selling in his gourd." Zhang Qingrue looked at Song Haoran. This operation was a cooperation between the three families, and Song Haoran was the commander of the Song family, so his opinion would naturally influence the whole team. Just let them do it first. Song Haoran was also curious at this time. Even if it's a pile of corpses, they have to ensure our safety. To be honest, I really want to see how they will do it. This. Zhang Qingrue still wanted to say something. The topic of piling up corpses was a little distant for her, but Mr. Seven gave her a hint with his eyes. Mr. Seven said, "Miss, let's wait and see. Although there are many Suzuki Kai people, most of them are from all walks of life, and their equipment is not as good as ours. Even if they want to make waves, they have to see whether their fists are big enough." Zhang Qingrue could only nod. Then, under the command of Suzuki and his son, some Suzuki Kai fighters were assigned to the front line, while the others, who were in charge, were waiting for the news at the back. If they found something and eliminated the danger, Zhang Qingrue, Song Haoran, and Suzuki and his son would be arranged to go forward and check it out. There was no other way. Song Howren wanted to enjoy the excitement of facing the unknown when exploring an ancient tomb for the first time. Unfortunately, Mr. Seven only wanted Zhang Qingrui to have such an experience, not gain such an experience. Speaking of which, I'm very curious about one thing, Mr. Mu Xianghua. Song Howren suddenly looked at Mu Xianghua with a smile at this time. At this time, the front line team did not come back, but they did not hear any movement, at least the front was safe. Haha, Mr. Song, please go ahead. After seeing the Song family's troops, Mu Xianghua had already added a respectful title to Song Howren. You said that this map was passed down by your ancestors. Song Howren smiled at this time. After so many years, didn't your ancestors think of exploring this tomb? Looking at the surrounding environment, I'm afraid this is the first time it was opened, right? Hearing Song Howren's words, Mr. Seven's eyes slightly narrowed. This question, when Mu Xianghua discussed with Zhang Lilanfang, the old lady had already considered it. But for some unknown reason, the old lady did not raise this question in several negotiations. Because there was no doubt that the carbonization test of the sample of the map sent by Mu Xianghua had confirmed the approximate age of the map. This map was given to Mu Xianghua by the Takizawa family. Facing Song Howren's sudden question, Mu Xianghua was stunned and could not think of how to answer it for a while. About this, haha. Song Howren smiled casually. Mr. Mu, don't be nervous, I just want to know, I didn't ask about your ancestors' private matters, you don't have to answer me. Mu Xianghua could only nod at this time awkwardly. Song Howren patted Mu Xianghua's shoulder, walked away casually, and began to look at the structure of the escape tunnel's stone wall as if he was sightseeing. Mu Xianghua secretly wiped his cold sweat at this time, only feeling that when he was questioned by Song Howren just now, it was like being stared at by a lion. He walked back to the Suzuki family's father and son resentfully, but found that the father and son of the Suzuki family seemed to be a little strange, since just now, the father and son of the Suzuki family actually walked in the team one after the other. At this time, the team in front sent someone to run back, and said that they found a big tomb ahead, and there were some things in it that they wanted everyone to see. Anything that was worth taking a look at in the ancient tomb was of considerable value. For a clan like the Li family, anything that was worth taking a look at was naturally not ordinary. Soon, everyone followed the old master to the place that the team explored. As for the people of the three families behind them, they were in charge of bringing up the rear. Of course, the team in charge of leading the way still continued on their way, and didn't stop here. This greatly improved the efficiency of the whole exploration work. And this tomb that was worth the surprise of the old master of the Li family actually hid a world-famous thing: the terracotta warriors. Rows of lifelike terracotta warriors were now standing in the pit of the tomb, and there were so many of them, no less than 1,000. God! China purple, China blue. When the strong light shone into the tomb, the moment the light illuminated the terracotta warriors that had been sealed for 2,000 years, Zhang Qingrui actually covered her mouth with her small hand because of excitement. China purple? China blue? Song Howren was startled, and he was quite puzzled. It refers to a kind of color painting in the Qin dynasty. Luoqiu answered Song Howren's puzzlement. At this time, Luoqiu walked to the pit of the tomb naturally, squatted down, and reached out to touch the body of a terracotta warrior directly below, and said casually, "In 1979, the archaeologists opened a tomb of the Qin dynasty in Lintong. When the tomb was opened, a variety of colors were displayed in front of everyone. Vermilion, purplish red, pinkish purple, pinkish blue, black, white. Terracotta warriors with different expressions were in formation. However, the gorgeous colors only lasted for a short time. After being exposed to the air for a few minutes, the colors were dehydrated, warped, and peeled off. In the end, they became the familiar terracotta warriors that people talked about." Luoqiu stood up, and there seemed to be something on his fingers. He twirled his fingers slightly. "As for what these disappearing colors are made of, it hasn't been determined yet. We just call them China Purple and China Blue. Oh. Song Howren listened to Luocchio's explanation with interest, and then he remembered something. Hey, aren't you a paleontologist? You are quite proficient in historical relics, right? Luocchio just smiled casually, glancing at Zhang Qingrui. I borrowed some basic books from you, and learned them on the spot. Zhang Qingrui gave a start. That was a long time ago. I remember you said you were interested in antiques. Zhang Qingrui smiled, suddenly recalling the appearance of Luocchio when he first came to her antique shop. Life was really a wonderful thing. At that time, probably no one had thought that there would be such a day when they would excavate the tomb together. Hey, they are really peeling off. Song Howren frowned at this time. The colors on the terracotta warriors were warped and peeled off piece by piece, just as Luocchio said. The only difference was that the colors were not peeled off because of the oxidation of the air. The reason why they were peeling off was that the terracotta warriors were moving at this time. Chapter 1050. But it was not only the painted layer on the terracotta soldiers that was peeled off. Large pieces of pottery were peeled off from the terracotta soldiers, falling to the ground and breaking apart. Obviously, the terracotta soldiers were not dead. They all had withered faces. Their skin had completely turned into a grayish-black color, perhaps due to the fact that it had been glued too tightly to the clay over the long years. They lowered their heads. But soon, some of them raised their heads. They closed their eyes, but soon, some opened their eyes. Kacha, pa-ka, the pottery layer on the terracotta soldiers was finally peeled off. A burst of gray mud rose from their feet, and the air was filled with a rotten smell. The first reaction of the Song family's soldiers was to raise the modern weapons in their hands and move closer to Song Howren and the others. As for the old masters of the Li family, their reaction was a little slower. As for the Suzuki Kai soldiers, looking at the frightened expression on their faces, it would probably take some time for them to react. What the hell is this? Mr. Seven, who had decades of experience in entering tombs, had never seen such a strange thing. Entering tombs, especially tombs from ancient times, would sometimes encounter some unclean things. However, the Li family, an ancient family of robbers, had accumulated a considerable amount of knowledge over the years, allowing Mr. Seven and the others to find a solution from it. But living people were hidden in the terracotta soldiers. This was never seen before, not even in any records of the Li family. They moved again. Mu Xianghua's panicked voice sounded at this moment. At this moment, his legs were trembling, and his face was pale. There was a trace of regret on his face. It seemed that he regretted taking over this job from the Takizawa family. But no matter how frightened Mu Xianghua was, everyone had to face this problem. These monsters came out of the terracotta soldiers, slowly walking toward them. And the first one had climbed out of the pit. Bang! In the tomb, a gunshot suddenly sounded. The bullet accurately hit the center of the forehead of the monster that climbed out of the pit. The powerful impact made the monster's head tilt back. It stopped, but it was still standing. At this moment, the surroundings were so quiet that it was frightening. All eyes were focused on this weirdo, who had climbed up. Suddenly, it lowered its head. Its eyes were bloodshot and crimson tears flowed out of its eyes, tears of blood. The bullet wound on its forehead was also dripping with dark red blood. A low and suppressed roar came out from its mouth. Facing this fatal attack, not only did it not die, it even seemed to have entered a state of madness. It suddenly flew over. Bang, bang, bang! The Song family soldiers holding the submachine guns did not hesitate to pull the trigger, and the bullets immediately sprayed on the strange man's body. Shell casings also fell densely to the ground. Under the frenzied barrage of attacks, the body of the monster that was lunging at Kirin was finally intercepted. Its body was now like a wooden board with thousands of holes. It had already turned into a blood man. Poof! At this moment it had fallen to the ground, but its palm was still grabbing upwards. This action caused one of the Song family's soldiers, who was already nervous, to suddenly pull the trigger again. The bullet hit the arm of the monster and directly knocked it down. This monster did not move at this time. Its eyes were closed, but strangely, a more strange smile appeared on its ferocious face. It's smiling? Someone's voice was unknown. Finally, it's free, it's normal to smile. But the next voice was recognized by everyone. It was the voice of the young master of the Suzuki family, Haruka Suzuki. Everyone subconsciously looked at Haruka Suzuki. At this time, Haruka Suzuki walked directly to the corpse of the monster, squatting down and touching here and there, then slowly said, "These people have died long ago, but were refined into living dead. Their souls were also imprisoned in the bodies of the living dead by some kind of secret technique." After saying this, Haruka Suzuki stood up, lifted his foot and kicked the corpse of the monster into the pit in front of him. Imprisoned for more than 2,000 years and never seen the light of day, now that the soul can escape and rest in peace, it's normal for it to be happy. "Young Master Suzuki, how do you know this?" The one who was curious was Song Hauran. At this time, his eyes were fixed on this young master of the Suzuki family, who gave him a somewhat different feeling. At this time, Haruka Suzuki turned his face, glanced at Song Hauran casually, and said, "Nonsense. Do you know about yin-yang masters?" "I know some methods of yin-yang masters." Everyone looked at each other, surprised by this young master of the Suzuki family's explanation, but at the same time, they had to try to believe this explanation. After all, a living person who walked out of the 2,000-year-old terracotta army and didn't die immediately after being shot in the head was enough to subvert people's understanding. "Young Master Suzuki, be careful!" At this time, Mu Xianghua cried out in alarm. It turned out that behind Haruka Suzuki, one monster after another began to climb out of the pit at this time. They were densely packed, like ants, and at this moment, they had all squeezed to the edge of the pit. This terrifying scene made the people holding guns break out in cold sweat again, and they hurriedly raised their weapons again. But at this time, Haruka Suzuki snorted lightly, and without making any big movements, he just opened his palm. A purple light floated in his palm, and then shot out. In the blink of an eye, the purple light shone brightly, illuminating every corner of the tomb. When the purple light shone on the bodies of the freaks, they all stopped. Their bloodshot eyes slowly closed, and then they lowered their heads. There was no more movement. "Don't worry, I've temporarily put the souls of these guys to sleep." Haruka Suzuki put his hands into his trouser pockets, and said indifferently, "It's the souls inside that drive the bodies of the living dead. When the souls calm down, these living dead are nothing to be afraid of. Besides," Haruka Suzuki's eyes swept over the well-equipped soldiers of the Song family, and suddenly sneered, "they may not be able to defeat them. After all, the weapons of you humans are quite lethal." No one paid attention to this young master of the Suzuki family's so-called "you humans." Perhaps they actually heard it, but their brains were not paying attention to it at this time. Because now that these monsters had calmed down, it seemed that a disaster had been averted, and everyone subconsciously felt relieved. "Ah!" As expected of young Master Suzuki. Mu Xianghua eagerly ran to Haruka Suzuki's side, and raised his eyebrows. Haruka Suzuki did not bother to pay attention to him. In fact, if it were not for the threat of some hidden powerful figure, Hakata would not care about the life and death of these tomb robbers, or rather, it would be happier to see these tomb robbers die, so that it could effortlessly obtain many souls. "You've seen it too." Haruka Suzuki now looked at Zhang Qingrui and Song Hauran, and said, "This tomb is not as simple as you think. Perhaps you have a lot of experience in tomb robbing, but I'm afraid that the road ahead of this tomb is not something you can handle. I advise you, if you want to leave, it's still early." Mu Xianghua was stunned. Wasn't young Master Suzuki determined to get the things in the Imperial Mausoleum? Why did he have the intention to leave now? Not only Mu Xianghua, But also the people from the Zhang clan and the Song clan looked at Haruko Suzuki with some confusion. Haruko Suzuki certainly knew what everyone was thinking, but it was also helpless. What could it do? That mysterious figure had said to let these people out safely, so in order to survive, it and Lianzhen had to protect these guys. But the meaning of that mysterious figure was very vague. What kind of protection law was it? Was it to protect them all the way until they got the treasures in the Imperial Mausoleum? Or was it to say that even if Zhang Qingrui and Lianzhen violently drove these people out, it would still be within the scope of the law? Of course, the latter was just Hakuda's own thought. That mysterious figure had asked it and Lianzhen to act as guards, so it naturally didn't want these guys to get hurt, but it was also a direction of thinking. Since it didn't mention whether they should go in or go out, if the people who proposed to leave were from the Zhang clan or the Song clan, did it mean that they didn't violate some of the bottom lines of this mysterious figure? In other words, if it could persuade these guys to leave, it could complete the mysterious figure's task. As a reward, it and Lianzhen would be able to recover after leaving. Although the recovery rate would only be reduced by 70%, it could still save it and Lianzhen several years of time. Of course, there was more than one reason for persuading them to leave. For example, Hakuda didn't admit that he was a very stingy guy, since there was such a mysterious figure behind him, but he didn't show up and instead let the Zhang clan and the Song clan do this. Did it mean that this figure was in some kind of situation? For example, this figure couldn't enter this place personally for some reason, but he did want to get the treasures in the depths of the Imperial Mausoleum, and this figure's intention to get the treasures was not very strong, so there was this kind of operation, to let it and Lianzhen protect them. In other words, everything was up to fate? But since I can't get it, no one else should think about getting it. With such a thought in mind, Orochi happily carried out the work of persuading them to leave. Hakuda's idea was not very complicated, but Yuichi Suzuki on the side. Lianzhen immediately saw through its idea, so it didn't say anything. It was not interested in the Sui Hoju, but only in Hakuda. Came here because it was kidnapped by the symbiotic contract signed by Hakuda, so it was more happy at this time. It was just that these two fellow sufferers had never considered one thing. That was the strange terracotta soldiers and the living dead that appeared in this place, and the means of Haruko Suzuki were no longer things that could be explained by science. They were crazily attacking everyone's cognition. Song Hauran was a person who dared to seek death. He liked to seek death. Well, adventure came from a peaceful heart. And this style, after he got the badge of the Sun God and had the ability to be almost immortal, had developed into a kind of sick situation. What else was in the depths of the Imperial Mausoleum? He was really interested. How powerful was this so-called yin-yang technique of Haruko Suzuki? He also wanted to see it, but Mr. Seven didn't think so. Although the development of the Imperial Mausoleum this time was part of the Li family's long-cherished wish, what he needed to do more was to protect Zhang Qingrui's comfort. Even if the Li family's ancestors had a rule that all descendants of the Li family had to enter the tomb, the old lady of the family didn't want to see the young lady in such an extremely dangerous situation. Originally, there were countless tombs in the world, and it didn't have to be the Imperial Mausoleum to complete the trial of the Li family's descendants. Two completely different opinions suddenly collided here. I plan to go deeper and have a look. Song Hauran took the lead at this time and said, since young Master Suzuki is proficient in yin-yang technique, I believe that he will be able to protect us well. Am I right? He suddenly remembered what Haruko Suzuki said to Mr. Seven before, and now he was even more curious about what made Haruko Suzuki act like this. I'm sorry, the Li family will withdraw from this development. Mr. Seven said at this time, Mr. Mu Xianghua, I'm very sorry to withdraw halfway. As for this cooperation, we will compensate you according to the rules of the industry for the deposit you have already paid. Zhang Qingrui opened her mouth, but didn't refute anything here. She knew clearly when she could be the young lady, and when she should listen. The terracotta soldiers and horses in the tomb had already made her want to withdraw. The Li family planned to withdraw, and Song Howren didn't intend to stop them. Instead, he gathered the soldiers of the Song clan and said, "You've all seen what's happening here. Next, it's not the Song family's action, but my own action. From now on, you can choose whether to follow me or wait for me outside." Military advisor. You're doing this again. Ah. We've been through fire and water, but you always do this at the last moment, aren't you bored? One of them directly raised the submachine gun in his hand, and said with a grim smile, "Didn't young Master Suzuki say this? Our things have great lethality, what's there to be afraid of?" They were indeed a bunch of lunatics. Mr. Seven coldly looked at these bloodthirsty guys of the Song family, and shook his head. He secretly thought that it was not good to have too much contact with the Song family. Song Howren smiled evilly and said, "Okay, as you wish. But you have to take some people out to send Luochio out." With that, Song Howren turned around. "Next, it won't be an ordinary adventure game. For you, it's still too." But Song Howren didn't finish his words and stopped, because Luochio disappeared. "Where is he?" Song Howren frowned and subconsciously looked around. "Did you see him?" Military advisor, who did you say you saw? A soldier of the Song family asked curiously. Song Howren gave a start and frowned. Just, who was it? Shouldn't there be someone else who came in with me?" Military advisor, there's no one else. I remember it clearly. Really? Song Howren lowered his head, and no one knew what he was thinking. Uncle Seven, I also feel that one person is missing. Zhang Qingrui glanced at Mr. Seven, and asked in a low voice. Mr. Seven asked curiously, "Who's missing?" Zhang Qingrui shook her head and hesitated. "I feel it's a very important person. I feel that he just spoke in front of us, but I can't remember." Mr. Seven said, "We're all here. As for the Song family, let them worry about it. If someone is missing, they'll be anxious. Anyway, miss, it's not a good time to stay here. I'd better send you out first." Zhang Qingrui nodded. The feeling of missing someone was slowly fading away. But before leaving, Zhang Qingrui asked people to put some clay peeled off from the terracotta soldiers. China purple, China blue, she didn't know why, but she always cared about it. Not long after, the Li family gathered all their people and began to evacuate. Hakata wasn't satisfied with the result, but he was happy that there were fewer people from the Li family. In this way, he and Lianzhen would have less work to do. Song Howren walked up to one of the motionless weirdos and pinched the muscles on the weirdo's arm. He clicked his tongue in wonder and said, "These muscles are really solid like steel. But these guys, they didn't look like soldiers when they were alive. Maybe they were artisans who were buried here after the tomb was built." Haruko Suzuki said indifferently, "Young Master Song, since you've decided to move on, there's no need to waste time here." Song Howren made an inviting gesture. Haruko Suzuki didn't say anything and walked in front. At this time, Yuichi Suzuki walked over, whispering, "You don't want the souls of the zombies?" Haruko Suzuki shook his head. "These souls were trapped in the zombies, so they've been consumed long ago. But they can still be kept in the zombies' bodies. Once they're free, they'll disappear, and have no food value. Speaking of which, don't you feel like someone is missing?" Suzuki Yuichi pondered for a moment. "I think so, but I also don't think so. Could it be? I'm afraid our cognition has been distorted," Haruko Suzuki said with a gloomy face. "This big brother is really dangerous." Soon, the tomb became empty, except for the living dead who had been frozen in place. Regardless of whether they were still moving forward or had already left, the footsteps were getting farther and farther away until they couldn't be heard anymore. Luochio slowly walked past the many living zombies. "You don't have anything left to trade with," the old man said. His voice was very soft. "But I like to listen to stories." Luochio walked up to one of the living zombies. He reached out his hand and lightly tapped on the zombie's forehead. its body was annihilated at this time, leaving only a faint light, which fell into Luo Chio's palm.